Chapter 76. On the field in front of the rostrum, everyone was awestruck. Before, they had pure worship or respect for the mysterious strong man. But from now on, everyone had a trace of fear for the mysterious strong man. Together, it was awe, respect and fear. Many people were moved by Lun Yan's story. If it were them, they would probably destroy Lun Yan's mind power and let him go. Even those who were more hard-hearted and never intended to let Lun Yan go would hesitate for a moment. However, the mysterious strong man did not hesitate at all. Lun Yan was instantly torn into pieces by the strong mind power. It was obvious that the mysterious strong man was not a good person. He was not a saint or a soft-hearted person. In the past, some people would occasionally complain. They said that the mysterious strong man should show up. Since he was so strong, he should lead the hunting group and set an example for everyone. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. But now, no one dared to have such thoughts. Perhaps it was a good thing for them that the mysterious strong man did not show up. Not far from Immortal, Xiao Dou stared at Immortal's back. His eyes were full of shock. When he was in the zombie farm, he always thought that Immortal was a very easygoing person. He was not ambitious and stood aloof from worldly affairs. He was content with the status quo. Later, at base C9, he realized that Immortal was not as easygoing as he seemed. Millions of corpses and rivers of blood. But now he knew that he was wrong. Immortal was not only cruel to zombies, but also to humans. He was ruthless and decisive. Not only were the enemies afraid of him, but even the people in the base began to revere him. Beneath his easygoing and tranquil appearance was an incomparably tyrannical strength and decisive means of killing. The psychological impact of this contrast was simply too great. It seemed that he should stay away from Immortal if he had nothing to do in the future. The farther the better. On the rostrum, the base chief did not expect the mysterious strong man to be so ruthless. After a moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly shouted, "Find a doctor and save Commander Yang." Only then did the crowd recover from the shock from before. Yang Kang's daughter also ran in the direction of Yang Kang again. Soon, the doctor made a simple diagnosis. Then, he raised his head and said in disbelief, "His heart and head were pierced, but he's still alive. This is simply a miracle." The base chief hurriedly asked. Could it be because he's a hunter and his body is much stronger than ordinary people? The doctor shook his head and replied, although this is also a factor, the most important factor is his own willpower. He must have something unfinished or someone he can't let go of. When the members of the body hunters heard this, they all looked at Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. They all knew how much Commander Yang loved his daughter. His wife had passed away several years ago. He had raised his daughter all by himself. Other than the work of the hunting group, he spent almost all his energy on his daughter. If there was someone in his heart that he couldn't let go of, it would definitely be his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. It's his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. A corpse hunter said. When everyone heard this, they also recalled the scene just now. Yang Kang's heart and head were clearly pierced, and it had been 6 or 7 hours since he was pierced. If it was anyone else, they would have died long ago. But not only did he not die. And when his daughter was taken away, he actually reached out and grabbed the hunter's ankle. How strong must his willpower be to be able to do that? No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't do that. Perhaps only a father like him could do that. At this moment, they looked at Yang Kang again. His right hand was still grabbing the hunter's ankle. When the doctor carefully examined it, he found that the bones in his hand were broken. It was obviously broken when the hunter tried to shake off his hand. Everyone was shocked again. A father's love was so great. A few corpse hunters, with reverence, carefully carried Yang Kang onto the stretcher. They slowly sent him to the infirmary of the hunting group. Everywhere they passed, everyone stared at the unconscious Yang Kang. Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan, had been holding her father's hand tightly. Tears had already blurred her eyes. In fact, no one knew that there were 3 reasons why young Kong was still alive. First, it was his physique. Second, it was because he was worried. Third, it was because he had taken the recovery medicine given by Immortal. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't completely digest the medicine. After nearly 10 years, the medicine was already less than 1/10 of it. The remaining trace of medicine, although it couldn't completely restore him. However, he was barely able to hang on to his last breath. Otherwise, no matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't have survived such a serious injury. From this, it could be seen how crazy the recovery medicine produced by the system was. But at this time, Immortal didn't know this. He didn't plan to give Yang Kang another bottle of recovery medicine. With Yang Kang's physique, since he could live until now, it shouldn't be difficult for him to keep his life. At this time, his gaze fell on the hot short-haired girl on the rostrum. There were thousands of corpse hunters in the hunting group, and tens of thousands of people present. She was the only one who dared to curse at Lun Yen. And she knew that as long as she endured for a while, she would be safe when the mysterious expert made his move. But she still refused to surrender. Even if she raised her hand for a second, it would be humiliating for her. How could a girl be so unyielding to such an extent? It made all the men present blush with shame. Immortal also admired him in his heart. A moment later, the base chief began to instruct everyone to deal with the corpses. At the same time, he also sent out some corpse hunters to persuade these civilians to go back first. Immortal also followed the crowd and walked towards the corpse field. As he walked, he recalled the feeling of using his telekinesis to tear those people apart. In fact, although he had reached level 9 psychokinesis, he could only lift things under 90 kilograms. With this kind of strength, it was impossible to tear a human body apart. However, after reaching level 9, his telekinesis was able to probe the human body to the finest detail. Which muscles of the human body were the easiest to tear, which bones were the weakest. Where had there been a fracture or an injury? He could easily detect all of this with just a probing of his mind power. Then he could start from these places and combine it with the strength of 90 kilograms and below to do all this. The principle was like a skilled butcher dismembering a cow. Once he was familiar with the structure of the cow's body, he could do it with ease. Immortal thought to himself that when his telekinesis was stronger in the future, even if he encountered those powerful mutated zombies, he could easily dismember their bodies. That night, after 12 o'clock, Immortal, as usual, planned to double and specify the rewards. But he suddenly had a thought. He had just done such a big thing today. Maybe he could try and see if he could sign other good things. Chapter 77. According to Immortal's original understanding, the event's sign-in mechanism had to be immediately signed in right after the event was completed. Now that an entire day had passed, the sign-in probably wouldn't have any effect at all. But how would he know if he didn't give it a try? Thinking of this, Immortal asked in his mind, "System, can I still use the event sign-in now?" The system's voice sounded frowny face yes. Immortal was a little surprised and asked, "Didn't you say that only after signing in immediately after doing a specific event can there be a specific event reward?" The system's voice sounded frowny face. The system never said that. The host has misunderstood. Immortal was a little speechless. It turned out that his understanding of the event reward mechanism had been wrong for such a long time. Thinking about it carefully, the system didn't seem to say that he had to sign in immediately after doing something to activate the event reward mechanism. Then let's sign in. Immortal rubbed his hands expectantly. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Use psychokinesis to tear apart the enemy. Sign in reward. Doomsday tier, memory plunder. Huh? Immortal was a little surprised. It turned out to be 2 skills. In the past, only when the system upgraded would there be more than 2 skill rewards. Pleasantly surprised, he opened the skill description. Doomsday tier, within the range of psychokinesis, you can use psychokinesis to find the enemy's weakness and tear it apart. AoE skills consume a lot of psychokinesis. Use with caution. Memory plunder, you can use psychokinesis to forcibly plunder the memories of others. The person whose memories are plundered will have a strong impact on the brain and will lose their memories. Their intelligence will also be irreversibly damaged. Use with caution. Mo was secretly shocked when he saw the descriptions of these two skills. These two skills were very violent and domineering skills. This was probably in line with the temperament of a dragon. Especially this memory plunder. Mo actually wanted to ask Lun Yen and the others about base C10 during the day. What exactly happened there? The mutated beasts and zombies nearby were actually stronger than other places. But there were too many people during the day, so it wasn't easy to ask. He couldn't be bothered to do anything else. In any case, he didn't plan to leave base C1 for the time being. He would think about it when he went out later. Therefore, he killed them all on the spot. But now that he had memory plunder, if he encountered such a situation in the future, he would directly plunder their memories. Wouldn't that save a lot of trouble? In the future, with these two skills, he would have 2 more trump cards. Thinking of this, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. Sigh, he had too many trump cards. Sometimes, he didn't even know which one to play. This was also a happy annoyance. The next day, Mo resumed his peaceful life. As for how the body hunters would regroup and how Yang Kong would recover, that was not his concern. However, while they were chatting, he heard Old Li mention something. Little Mo, that hot chick from yesterday, do you know why he would rather die than surrender? Mo was interested in this matter and asked, what's wrong? Happy had just gotten some food from the cafeteria, and he passed it to Mo and Old Li. He also looked at Old Li curiously. Old Li opened the lunch box and drank a mouthful of porridge. He said, Happy is a good child. Whoever marries her will definitely be blessed by 8 generations of ancestors. As he spoke, he glanced at Mo intentionally. Mo also drank a mouthful of porridge and said, You sound like you're scolding someone. Old Li glared at Mo. He thought to himself, this kid always interrupts when we're talking about serious matters. He shook his head and continued, I heard from Mr. Wang, who wears bottle-bottomed glasses, that when Hot Chick was young, the base had not been built yet. The zombie virus had just arrived, and the world was in chaos. In order to fight for supplies, people would kill and set fires. They would do anything. One day, a gunman broke into their house. He snatched a big bag of food and water and even shot her mother to death. At that time, when the gunman was packing the food and water, he put down the gun. Hot Chick always thought that if her father had been braver, he could have pounced on him and snatched the gun. That way, her mother would not have been shot to death. But at that time, her father kept his hands up and stood facing the wall, trembling. From then on, she hated seeing people raise their hands the most. Hence, yesterday, she would rather die than raise her hands for even a second. When Mo and Happy heard this, they both sighed. Old Li sighed in the end. There are all kinds of fathers in this world. There are Yang Kong who misses his daughter so much that he has to force himself to endure even when he's injured. There are also fathers like Hot Chick's father. Sigh. At the same time, in Chief Ma Yangshi's office. Chief Ma Yangshi was sitting behind his desk. The bruises on his face had not completely disappeared. There were 2 people sitting on the sofa in front of his desk. One of them was the vice leader of the hunter group, Guo Jutao, who had always been a little sissy. 2 days ago, he led a team of 10 people to explore the area around the base. He had just returned today. The other person was the person in charge of the base's laboratory, a woman, Professor Chen. Chief Ma Yangshi looked at Guo Jutao and said in a low voice, the doctor said that Leader Yang's life can be saved. Guo Jutao was instantly delighted and said in a sissy voice, that's great. With the leader's body, it won't be long before he fully recovers. The leader is the soul of the hunter group. The hunter group can't do without him. Chief Ma Yongshur did not have a hint of joy on his face. However, although his life can be saved, the injury to his heart is too serious. Even if he recovers, he won't be able to do strenuous exercise in the future. In other words, he will become a normal person. The joy on Guo Jutao's face instantly froze. This. Chief, are you joking? Chief Ma Yongshur did not answer. However, Guo Jutao already knew the answer from his gloomy face. Guo Jutao was a little confused. He thought that the leader would return soon. He did not expect this to be the result. Ma Yongshur also sighed. So, you have to take up the responsibility of the leader of the hunter group and reorganize the hunter group. Guo Jutao's face showed panic. Since the beginning of the hunter group, he had always been the leader's assistant. Later, in the body hunters, he was also the deputy leader. Until now, he was the deputy leader. He had never been the leader. Now, the base chief suddenly asked him to be the leader. He could not do it at all. And he knew that he was a little sissy. Although he hated it when others said that about him, he knew in his heart that it was the truth. How could he be the leader? Who would be convinced by him? Chief Ma Yongshur's gaze slowly moved to Guo Jutao's face. Staring into his eyes, he said, I believe that you can do it well. Moreover, this is an order. Guo Jutao hesitated for a moment and finally puffed out his chest. Chief, I promise to complete the mission. Although he was still a little nervous, he also knew that in the current situation, it seemed that no one in the hunter group could take on this responsibility except him. Ma Yongshur nodded. Then he looked at Dr. Chen in the laboratory. Dr. Chen, the mutated zombies and mutated beasts outside are getting stronger and stronger. Our hunter group suffered heavy losses at this time. If the zombies attack the city soon, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist at all. Although there is a mysterious strong man in charge, we can't rely on him forever. After all, a person like the mysterious strong man can't stay in the base forever. Therefore, I want you to restart Project X. Dr. Chen's expression changed slightly. Project X? Chief, the mutated zombies created by Project X are indeed much stronger than the naturally mutated zombies outside the base. But the uncertainty is also much greater. The mutated zombies we created went out of control and killed more than a dozen researchers. Then they broke into the zombie farm. It almost caused a disaster. Even now, I still wake up from my dreams. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to restart Project X now. Ma Yongshur shook his head. Last time, we underestimated the strength of the man-made mutated zombies. This time, we have a sample and a certain amount of data. We are fully prepared. If we combine it with the mutated zombie blood that Lun Yan brought, we might be able to create a stronger mutated zombie that will listen to our orders. Dr. Chen was nervous when he heard this crazy plan. But he was also slightly excited. Chapter 78. Ma Yongshur's so-called Project X was to create mutated zombies. In the past, Ma Yongshur had discovered that the zombies in the wilderness were getting stronger and stronger. He had already predicted that the zombies would attack the city in the future. With the few firearms that humans had, they would definitely not be able to resist. So he ordered the laboratory to try to artificially create mutated zombies. Then he would think of a way to tame these mutated zombies and let them be used by humans. If they succeeded, humans would have a great advantage in the battle against zombies in the future. The mutated zombies that they created were indeed very strong, dozens of times stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. But they were extremely unstable and easy to lose control. This was why the mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory that year. Since then, Ma Yongshur had put Project X on hold. Until now, powerful mutated zombies had appeared in the wilderness. And their hunting group had suffered heavy losses. So he wanted to restart Project X again. While Dr. Chen was nervous, he was also a little excited. It was her lifelong regret that she couldn't continue with Project X back then. Now, the leader had finally ordered to restart it. How could this not make her excited? After the leader of the base finished these two things, he seemed to have finally fulfilled his wish. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes tiredly. In the next few days, Emosure still signed in every day, raised pigs, and fed zombies. Different from the past, this time he did not hear anyone talking about the mysterious strong man. There were even many people who avoided the words, mysterious expert. Obviously, Emosure's ruthless methods that day made these people in awe. They no longer dared to casually talk about him. Emosure was also happy to be quiet. In the base, there were big news from time to time. The biggest news was that the leader of the base had resigned. It had been more than 20 years since the base was established. During this period, the leader had been leading the base. Whether it was his leadership ability or his sense of responsibility, there was nothing to say. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. Never would they have thought that the leader would suddenly resign. In the yard, Emosure and Oldly finished feeding the pigs and zombies. The two were still chatting under the grape trellis. Recently, there have been more and more zombies sent to the zombie farm. It's a little too busy. Oldly sighed as he massaged his waist. Emosure nodded. There's a lot of demand in the lab, so our corpses are naturally busy. Oldly said, I'm old, and my legs aren't good. It's been a busy day, and I can't take it anymore. Happy is a girl, and she might not be able to handle such heavy work. Shouldn't the leader send more people over? Emosure nodded again. I think, since the leader is so understanding, he should know. Just as they were talking, footsteps sounded outside the door. Two people walked in from outside the door. One of them was a leader, and the other was the chief of the base, Ma Yangshi. Oldly immediately stood up with a nervous and surprised expression on his face. The chief was a big shot. When had he ever come to a corpse farm? He had been in the base for more than 20 years, but he had never been so close to the chief. Chief, why are you here? Oldly felt a little uneasy. Ma Yangshi seemed to have aged a lot in these few days. He smiled. Oldly, right? You can call me Old Ma. I'm no longer the chief. This, Oldly was an honest man. He naturally could not change the way he addressed Ma Yangshi. Ma Yangshi's expression was a little gloomy. I made a mistake, so I should be punished. I asked the new chief to punish me, but he refused no matter what. I had no choice, so I could only punish myself. I sent myself here. The smile on his face was obviously a little pale. This, Old Lee's face was filled with disbelief. The chief of the base was a person who stood at the top of the base. And the corpse farm was a job that was looked down upon the most. The chief of the base actually came here to raise corpses. This was something he did not even dare to dream of in the past. The leader said to Old Lee, all right, all right. All right, all right, Old Lee. We'll do whatever the chief says. In the future, you have to take care of the chief. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. Old Lee quickly nodded. Yes, yes. Ma Yangshi said, I told you, I'm a normal person now. Don't call me chief anymore. Then, he looked at Emosure and Happy and smiled. You must be young Mo and Happy. I'm a complete newbie now. I'll need you to take care of me. Happy was a little flustered. After all, no matter what, he was still the chief of the base. A person who stood high above others. Emosure was the only one who smiled generously. No problem. Over the next few days, Mosure and Happy brought Old Ma to familiarize himself with the work and the environment. Old Lee still could not change the way he addressed Ma Yangshi and kept calling him chief. Only Emosure called him Old Ma generously. This made Old Ma feel very comfortable. Due to Old Ma's arrival, the number of guests in the corpse farm also increased. However, Old Ma did not seem to be willing to meet people. Gradually, the number of people who came became fewer and fewer. The corpse farm returned to its former peace. A few days later, when Old Ma familiarized himself with the work, more than 20 zombies and 10 pigs were transferred to the corpse farm. These zombies and pigs would be under Old Ma's care in the future. Old Ma was quite nimble and diligent in his work. Moreover, he treated people warmly and did not have the air of a former chief. Therefore, he quickly gained the favor of the people in the corpse farm. However, this everyone did not include Mo Shi. He always felt that there was something fishy about this matter. As for what exactly was fishy, he could not tell. It was just a feeling. Mo Shi secretly guessed in his heart that Ma Yangshi had come for him. Could it be that he already knew that he was the mysterious powerhouse? However, the current Mo Shi did not care whether his identity was exposed or not. In front of his absolute strength, any schemes were just a joke. The reason why he did not take the initiative to expose himself was because he loved peace and was afraid of trouble. Every day, after finishing the work in the corpse farm, he had nothing else to do and was free. However, he was still a little curious about Ma Yangshi's goal. Therefore, in the next few days, after Mo Shi finished feeding the zombies and pigs, he seemed to be resting under the grape trellis. However, he had already sent out his psychic power to observe Old Ma's every move. Sure enough, as soon as he probed, he found out that something was wrong. These days, there was a great demand for zombies in the laboratory. The hunting group caught zombies from outside the base and brought them to the corpse farm. In a few days, these zombies would be taken away by the laboratory. As the saying goes, the corpse farm was made of iron and the zombies flowed like water. However, among the zombies raised by Ma Yangshi, there was one zombie that had been raised in the zombie room and had never been taken away. Moreover, every time Ma Yangshi went in to feed this zombie, he always stayed longer than in other corpse farms. There was even one time when Ma Yangshi's eyes were shining with tears when he faced this zombie. Mo Shi couldn't help but become curious. Chapter 79. Mo Shi used his telekinesis to detect that Ma Yangshi was actually crying to a zombie. A living person would shed tears for a zombie. Mo Shi was puzzled and carefully examined the zombie again. This was a female zombie. She was about 30 years old. Other than the obvious claw marks on her neck, there were no other injuries. And every time Ma Yangshi saw this female zombie, his eyes were filled with pain. After detecting this, and combining it with Ma Yangshi's behavior, Mo Shi suddenly realized something. A human being could have feelings for a zombie. There were only two possibilities. 1. This person was obsessed with corpses. This had happened in the base before. 2. This zombie was once this person's true love. Obviously, Ma Yangshi should be the latter. Combined with Ma Yangshi's age, Mo Shi guessed that this female zombie should have been his girlfriend or wife. More than 20 years had passed, and the appearance of zombies had not changed much. And Ma Yangshi was already old. Mo Shi guessed this and couldn't help but be moved. So that was it. Ma Yangshi was the real zombie keeper. After this woman became a zombie, he didn't abandon her. Instead, he kept her until now. He kept her for more than 20 years. One must know that when the base was first established, people hated zombies to the extreme. Zombies destroyed the whole world, destroyed their families, harmed their parents, children, and loved ones. They had long hated zombies to the bone. So a few years later, when the zombie farm was established, it was after countless discussions and tremendous pressure that the zombie farm was built. In that kind of environment, if someone raised a zombie privately, he would probably be beaten to death immediately. It was conceivable that Ma Yangshi wanted to raise a zombie without anyone knowing, and for more than 20 years. How difficult was it? It also showed how deep his love for this woman was. After discovering this, Mo Shi's heart had a little more respect for Ma Yangshi. However, that was all. When he saw Ma Yangshi again, Mo Shi acted as if he didn't know about this at all. This was Ma Yangshi's business. As long as it didn't affect his comfortable life, Mo Shi was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Over the past 3 months, Emotion's psychokinesis finally showed signs of a breakthrough through the continuous injections of brain cell enhancers. At midnight that night, Emotion decided to sign in 10 bottles of the enhanced version of brain cell enhancer. He injected these enhancers into his body one by one. With the strength of his body now, it was naturally impossible for an ordinary syringe to penetrate his body. However, the syringes he received from the system were all made of special materials and were extremely sharp. On top of that, Emotion's telekinesis allowed him to detect the most minute details. It could find the most vulnerable part of the skin. Furthermore, his strength was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. That was why it could easily pierce through the skin. Soon, the 8th injection was completed. At this moment, he felt his head begin to heat up. His heart skipped a beat. I'm finally going to break through. He then put the remaining 2 syringes into his backpack. Then, he used his telekinesis to observe the medicinal power that had just entered his body. The medicinal effect flowed through his blood vessels and headed straight for his brain. In the brain, it spread along the capillaries. Along with the spread of the medicinal effect, his telekinesis also spread out instantly. His telekinesis covered a radius of 900 meters. However, as the medicinal effect took effect, the range of his telekinesis rapidly expanded. 910 meters, 930 meters, 991 meters, 1000 meters. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, any movement in the wind or grass could be seen. He could easily detect 2 mosquitoes flirting with each other in the warehouse 1,000 meters away. At the same time, as long as it was less than 100 kilograms, he could lift it. In other words, with his current telekinesis, he could casually lift a person. Of course, the increase in the power of telekinesis was only secondary. The most important thing was that after his telekinesis reached level 10, his use of telekinesis would become more skillful and natural. In the past, when he was level 8, he could use his telekinesis to multitask. Now that he had become a level 10 telekinesis master, his telekinesis was able to do 3 things at once. Moreover, after his telekinesis reached level 10, the most terrifying thing was that his combat strength had greatly increased. He could feel that with his current telekinesis, even if he were to face a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could easily blow up their heads with just a thought. This made Emotion slightly excited. Then, he picked up the 9th brain cell enhancer and injected it into his body. He had a hunch that level 10 of psychokinesis was not the end. He still had a long way to go to be invincible in the world. However, this time, when the medicinal effect entered his body and rushed into his brain, it did not act on his brain cells. Instead, after circulating in his body, it was discharged through his sweat pores. Emotion smiled bitterly. It seemed that his telekinesis had been raised to the limit. If he wanted to raise it further, it was not something that could be done by the medicinal effect. He had to find the right opportunity. However, this matter could not be rushed. Fortunately, now that his telekinesis had increased, he could detect the changes in the medicinal effect when it entered his body. It would not be like when he reached the limit of a zombie hunter and wasted a lot of enhancers. Next, it was time to increase his physical strength. At midnight the next day, Emotion signed in and received 10 Titan Dragon Gene enhancers. They were injected into his body. He estimated that he would be able to break through in 3 months at most. At that time, his hunter psychokinesis would reach the peak of level 10 at the same time. Thinking about it, he was really looking forward to it. However, on this day, another uninvited guest appeared in the base. It was a man and a woman. The man was a hunter. The woman was a psychokinesis. What was even more surprising was that they were actually flying a helicopter over. One had to know that monsters were everywhere outside the base. Naturally, no one was mining oil. Things like helicopters, which consumed a lot of fuel, could not fly anymore. The people of Base C1 had not seen a helicopter fly for more than 10 years. Now that these 2 people were driving a helicopter, it was surprising. However, the people of the base were only surprised. They treated these two people extremely coldly. After the incident with Lu Wang and Lun Yan, they were quite repulsed by outsiders. Therefore, as soon as the helicopter landed, they took control of the man and woman. After the interrogation of the new chief of the base, they learned that the man and woman were from Base C2. Their Base C2 happened to be built near an oil field. It took them nearly 5 years to recover the oil field. And this time, they came out to contact the other bases. The mutated beasts and mutated zombies were getting stronger and stronger, and humans seemed to be facing a real extinction. Therefore, they were ordered by the chief of the base to contact the other bases to find a solution. In the zombie farm. When Doomsday heard Old Lee say that these two people were from Base C2, he could not help but be moved. Base C2 was only 100 kilometers away from the Draconic ruins. Chapter 80. According to the map that Immortal had obtained, there were many people in the area. The location of the dragon ruins was more than 100 kilometers away from Base C2. Immortal was not very strong before, so he did not go there. But now that his telekinesis had reached level 10, he was almost invincible in the wilderness. And he had a trump card like the dragon Shadow Step. If he encountered danger, he could escape if he could not win. He was a little tempted. When the two of them left, should he leave with them? However, before they could leave, strange things happened in the base. On this day, Immortal was feeding zombies in the base. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound coming from afar. Puff! If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible to hear it from so far away. Even hunters could not do it. But Immortal, as a psychokinesis, caught this soft sound. However, he did not care. But half a day later, there was news. The captain of the hunting group 1, Little Bean, was assassinated. Although it did not hit the vital parts, Little Bean's life was saved. But this matter attracted the attention of the entire Base C1. After all, attacking a member of the hunting group had never happened before. The members of the hunting group were all very strong. And their duty was to protect the safety of the entire base. Therefore, most people were very respectful to the members of the hunting group and would not harm them. Even if the members of the hunting group had conflicts, they would not be stupid enough to shoot in the base. They could easily find a place outside the base to harm the other party, and it would not easily arouse suspicion. So, who was it? Why did they do this? Many people pointed the finger of suspicion at the two people from Base C2. However, the two of them had alibis. The new chief of the base ordered the body hunters to investigate this matter thoroughly. However, no one would have thought. This was just the beginning. 3 days later, it was lunchtime. Suddenly, a roar came from the direction of the laboratory. Roar, roar, then, an ear-piercing alarm sounded. Beep, 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 then, there were screams in the laboratory. Boom, another loud sound came. Immortal used his telekinesis to check. He found that the door of the laboratory, which was used to resist rockets, was directly blown out. Then, a huge guy with a height of 3 meters jumped out. This guy did not have an upper lip, so his sharp teeth were exposed. It looked extremely ugly. On his shoulders, there were several bone spurs as thick as fingers. His entire right arm had transformed into a 2-meter-long sharp blade. His left arm transformed into a 3-meter-long axe. When Immortal's telekinesis probed this guy, he was speechless. Those fellows in the laboratory didn't learn from their mistakes. He had created such a monster again. However, this time, Immortal did not intend to make a move. With the strength of the body hunters, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with this mutant zombie. The mutated zombie wreaked havoc at the entrance of the laboratory. The corpse hunting team rushed over after hearing the news and hurriedly used their guns and rockets to force it back into the laboratory. But he didn't expect it to backfire. This mutated zombie, after being bombarded by the artillery, actually turned around and rushed straight to the corpse farm. Immortal shook his head helplessly. He wondered if he had gone back in time to 6 or 7 years ago. In the other rooms of the corpse farm, Old Li, Happy, and the former chief Ma Yangshi were all nervously hiding in their own rooms. But different from Old Li and Ma Yangshi, Happy even looked at Mo Shi's room through the crack in the window from time to time. Would Brother Mo make a move? If a monster rushed in, would she be able to see Brother Mo make a move for the first time? However, it was obvious that she was going to be disappointed. When the mutated zombie jumped 5 meters and was about to jump in from the wall of the corpse farm, bang! There was a loud noise. A foot kicked the head of the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie was immediately sent flying. The person who came was a hunter from the body hunters. With him, it was easy to deal with the mutated zombie. Happy couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Fortunately, it didn't cause much damage. However, after this incident, many people began to feel nervous. More people pointed their fingers at the man and woman in base C2. When Mo Shi and Happy went to the cafeteria to eat, they heard the discussion. Before those two people came, everything in the base was fine. A few days after they arrived, Captain Littlebean was attacked, and the murderer hasn't been found yet. Now the mutated zombie is out again. It must be them. If it's not them, who else could it be? In my opinion, they should be sentenced to death. Or at the very least, they should be chased out of the base. Another person said. The lab didn't learn from their mistakes. 6 or 7 years ago, the mutated zombie killed so many people. They actually dared to study mutated zombies. They were just following orders. I heard that the research this time was ordered by the former chief. He said that he wanted to study mutated zombies that could be commanded to increase the overall strength of the base. Oh, if that's the case, then there's no problem. Because of the previous incident, Chief Ma took the blame and resigned. He even sent himself to the corpse farm. There's nothing to say about this kind of person. I'm just worried that this will create stronger monsters and destroy the entire base. Sigh, there's nothing we can do about it. The zombies outside are getting stronger and stronger. If we don't do this, the base will still be destroyed. It's just a matter of time. I think Chief Ma did the right thing. When Mo Shi heard this, he felt that it was a little strange. As for what was strange, he couldn't figure it out. Since he couldn't figure it out, he was too lazy to think about it. In short, it was fine as long as it wasn't directed at him. Even if it was directed at him, with his strength, the other party would just be digging their own graves. After the mutated zombie incident, the man and woman from base C2 were directly quarantined for 3 days. After the body hunters investigated and confirmed that it wasn't them who did it, they were released. If it was an ordinary person, they would have left immediately after receiving this kind of treatment. But this man and woman were very abnormal. Not only did they not leave immediately, but they also strolled around the base. They seemed to be very interested in the laboratory and the corpse farm. Even if they were pointed at by passers-by, they still acted as if nothing happened. Of course, they couldn't enter the laboratory. They walked around the laboratory a few times. Then, they came to the corpse farm. After Mo Shi finished feeding the zombies, he was basking in the sun with Old Li and Old Ma in the yard and chatting. Happy was mending a camouflage uniform that Mo Shi had punctured. In this apocalyptic world, resources were scarce. Of course, cloth was also very scarce. People's clothes were usually mended over and over again until they couldn't be mended anymore. Then, they would change into a slightly newer set of old clothes. When they heard the sound of footsteps, they looked up. They saw the man and woman walking in. The man was in his 30s and had a scar at the corner of his eye. The woman was also in her 30s and was wearing a tight leather jacket. She looked valiant and heroic, but also sexy. Old Li, who had always been honest, couldn't help but frown when he saw these two people. Although he wasn't sure if these two people had anything to do with the two incidents, it was true that after these two people arrived, strange things began to happen. Happy subconsciously moved closer to Mo Shi. The former chief, Old Ma, was very enthusiastic. "You're here. Take a seat. I'll get you some water. The man glanced at the four people. When he saw Happy, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Chapter 81. When the young man saw Happy, his eyes instantly lit up. It was as if he was a child who had discovered a new toy. Although his gaze only flashed for a moment, Emosher's mental power was far superior to that of a normal person, so he still caught it. He furrowed his brows slightly. Although Emosher had not confirmed his relationship with Happy yet, he would never allow anyone else to think about Happy. The young man acted as if he was familiar with them. He extended his hand and was about to shake hands with everyone. While shaking hands with Old Lee, he said, "Uncle, I'm Hao Ren, a level 5 hunter from base C2. Nice to meet you." Then, he shook hands with Old Ma, who had just brought water over. Then, he extended his hand to Emosher. Emosher acted as if he did not see it. He turned his head, picked up the cup, and drank the water by himself. Hao Ren did not feel awkward. He turned to Happy. His eyes lit up, and he extended his hand. Happy hesitated for a moment, then imitated Emosher. He turned 90 degrees and continued to mend his clothes. Emosher was a little surprised. "Happy, you've learned bad things." Hao Ren was rejected by Happy, and there was a hint of regret in his eyes. The woman beside him glared at Hao Ren. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He continued to point at the woman in leather and introduced her to everyone. "This is my colleague, Zhen Shishir." The beautiful Zhen Shishir smiled politely at everyone. However, when she glanced at Happy, a hint of surprise and jealousy flashed in her eyes. She thought that she was already very beautiful, but she did not expect this girl to be even more beautiful than her. No wonder that scumbag Hao Ren's eyes widened when he saw this girl. When she thought of this, she glared at Hao Ren again. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He laughed and said, "Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse farm. We're here today because we want to visit and learn. When we return to the base, we'll suggest to the leader that we should build a laboratory and a corpse farm as well. That's why all of you are my masters. Seniors, please take care of me." Emosher didn't respond to him. Naturally, Happy ignored him. Old Lee only snorted. Only Old Ma said with a smile, "I see. Welcome, welcome. Now that all humans share a common destiny, our bases should communicate more and learn from each other's strengths." Then he turned to Emosher and said, "Emosher, Happy, the zombies you raise are the best. You can show them around." Emosher yawned and said, "I'm tired." As he spoke, he stood up and slowly walked out of the courtyard. Happy picked up the clothes by his side and lifted them. She indicated that she was mending her clothes and had no time. Although she couldn't speak, she wasn't a fool. Just now, the way this Hao Ren looked at her was a little strange. That guy was not a good person at all. Even though she felt that she wasn't good enough for Brother Emo, however, she didn't want Brother Emo to misunderstand. Seeing this, Old Ma shook his head helplessly. He said to Emosher and Happy, "If you're busy, give me the key. I'll show them around." Emosher's voice came from the entrance of the courtyard. "It's in my room. Happy knows where it is." Happy immediately got up and entered Emosher's room. He took out a string of keys to the zombie cultivation room. Then, he handed the keys to her row of zombie cultivation rooms to Old Ma. Then, he took the clothes he was mending and entered the room. Old Ma smiled wryly and sighed. Young people, Hao Ren didn't care at all. He glanced at Happy's door. He said, "Actually, we can all understand. After we came to the base, strange things kept happening. If it were us, we would also be suspicious. We have already been treated as enemies by all the people in base C1. So, we will try our best to learn your advanced experience over the next 2 days. We plan to leave the day after tomorrow." Old Ma didn't say anything else. He brought the two of them to carefully visit Immortal and Happy's row of zombie cultivation rooms. At 3:00 in the afternoon, the man and woman left the zombie farm. When they were about to leave, Howren still looked at Happy's room reluctantly. He said loudly, "Then we'll take our leave." The woman called Jinshusher also keenly noticed this. She also glanced at Happy's room. A hint of coldness flashed in her eyes. They were 1,000 meters away from the zombie farm. Jinshusher let out a cold snort. "Humph, you can't walk when you see a beautiful woman." Howren giggled and said, "Beauty is beautiful. Everyone has a love for beauty, isn't it? Besides, I'm lustful but not lustful. It doesn't matter if I just take a look." Jinshusher snorted coldly again. "Am I not enough for you to look at?" Howren giggled again. "Of course you're beautiful. It's just that if you look at the same kind of beauty for a long time, it's inevitable that you'll get tired. Look at someone else and relieve your fatigue. At that time, when I look back at you, I'll find you even more beautiful." Jinshusher glared at Howren. "Shameless." Then she said coldly, "If you dare to look at this woman again in the future, I'll kill her." Howren's forehead immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly begged for mercy. "I say, Sister Zhen, please don't cause trouble again. We're about to leave. If you really cause trouble again, will you still be able to leave?" Jinshusher sneered. "This crappy base doesn't even have a single psychokinesis. If I want to leave, will they be able to stop me?" Howren nodded repeatedly. "You're a level 4 psychokinesis. I'm a level 5 hunter. If we really want to leave, no one in this base can stop us. But let's try not to cause trouble. We're here for peace, okay?" The woman said coldly, "For peace? I think you're here to hook up with a woman. We're leaving tomorrow." Howren was stunned. "Didn't we say the day after tomorrow?" Jinshusher glanced in the direction of the zombie farm. "The day after tomorrow? You still want to hook up with that vixen? I'll kill her tonight." Howren's forehead broke out in cold sweat again. Fine. Tomorrow it is. You're good, you're the boss. I'm begging you, please don't cause any more trouble." Jinshusher rolled her eyes at Howren and said, "You should say that to yourself." After saying that, she held her head high and strode away. Howren, on the other hand, was like an obedient dog, obediently following behind. The next morning, Immortal woke up early as usual. Although life in the zombie farm was leisurely and he could sleep in. But after becoming a hunter and psychokinesis, he was full of energy. Although he always went to bed after midnight, he was already awake at 6 in the morning. He first fed the pigs, then took the pork from the slaughterhouse. He went to his row of zombie farms and fed them one by one. Happy also woke up at this time. She saw Immortal and smiled sweetly. Immortal instantly felt that the whole world was bright. Then, Happy also took the meat and began to feed the zombies. After a while, Immortal opened the door of a zombie farm. But suddenly, he heard a few clanking sounds from Happy's side. It was clearly the sound of a plate falling to the ground. The next moment, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard. Happy ran out of the zombie farm in a panic. Behind her was a zombie with a mouth full of blood. It roared like a beast and chased after Happy. Chapter 82. Happy ran out of her corpse reclamation room in a panic. The grape leaves under her feet also flew up. Her right hand was already dripping with blood. Blood spilled on the fallen leaves in the yard, and the fallen leaves instantly looked like blood-red butterflies. They danced behind her. Behind her, a zombie with a mouth full of blood chased after her like a beast. It let out a bone-chilling roar. It chased after Happy. Happy was extremely flustered. She saw Immortal come out of the room. She did not run towards Immortal, but away from Immortal. When Immortal saw this, his face immediately darkened. He took a step forward and instantly covered 50 meters. When he arrived in front of Happy, he pulled him over and placed him behind him. Then, he was about to attack. But at that moment, the door of the room beside the aisle suddenly opened. A shadow jumped out from inside. The crowbar in the person's hand hit the zombie's head with a whine. Bang! Blood gushed out of the zombie's head, and it immediately fell to the ground. But the person used too much force and did not stop. After the crowbar hit the zombie, it bounced towards Immortal. Immortal hugged Happy and gently turned his body. He avoided the crowbar. He looked up. The person was Old Ma. Old Ma's expression was solemn. He asked Immortal, "Are you okay?" Immortal shook his head. Old Ma saw the blood on Happy's right hand, and his expression suddenly froze. Happy was bitten. Immortal's expression was gloomy. "Don't worry." At that moment, Old Lee also heard the commotion and rushed over. When he saw Happy was bitten, pain immediately appeared in his eyes. Happy's eyes were filled with extreme sadness. It was not because of the physical pain. It was because of the sadness in her heart. She was going to become a zombie. At that time, she would never know Brother Mo again. In pain, she wanted to push Immortal away. She was going to become a zombie, and she could not drag Brother Mo down. However, Immortal's arm was so strong. She could not push him away at all. Immortal hugged Happy tightly and comforted her softly by her ear. "Don't worry, you won't turn into a zombie, trust me." He had once asked Happy and Old Lee to inject the antibodies against Virus X. But even so, when he saw the blood on Happy's right hand, his heart still ached. It was a heart-wrenching pain, as if someone was gripping his heart tightly. He didn't even feel this much pain when his leg was bitten off by a zombie. This was the first time in his life that he felt this way. He carefully held Happy's hand and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Go to my house. I have medicine." Old Ma hurriedly pulled Immortal aside and said, "Xiao Mo, she's about to turn into a zombie. Let her go." Happy also wanted to break free. But Immortal held her so tightly. It was as if he was never willing to let go of her again. At the same time, Immortal shook off Old Ma's hand and said in a low voice, "It's impossible for her to become a zombie. Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her." As he spoke, he happily strode back to his house. Old Lee quickly called out from behind. Xiao Mo, let her go. I know, I don't want her to turn into a zombie, but she's about to change. I can't lose my son after losing my daughter." Old Lee was so anxious that he sounded like he was about to cry. He wanted to catch up to Immortal and Happy. But with his legs, he couldn't catch up at all. In a hurry, he shouted to Old Ma, "Old Ma, quickly pull him back, quick." However, Old Ma didn't react. He turned to look at Old Ma and saw that Old Ma's expression was dull. Old Lee frowned. Why was Old Ma in a daze at this time? He couldn't care less and limped toward Immortal. However, Immortal slammed the door shut with a clang. Old Lee was so anxious that he was sweating. He kept knocking on the door outside, but there was no response. He called Old Ma for help again. Old Ma wasn't as dull as before, but his reaction seemed to be much slower. Old Lee was so anxious that he wanted to cry. "What's going on?" "I, Old Lee, am about to be buried in the ground, but I have to send my child away." At this time, Old Ma was shocked by Immortal's words just now. "Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her." Isn't this talking about me, Old Ma? Could it be that Immortal knows that I raise zombies? If others knew that he raised zombies, he wouldn't care if his reputation was ruined. But would those people take his wife away from him? How can that be? I can't let that happen. It seems that I have to have a good talk with Xiao Mo in the future. At this time, in Immortal's room, he pulled out a box beside the bed and took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He had checked in too many times, and his space was almost full with other things. There was only one bottle of recovery medicine left in the space, and it was used by him a few days ago. Fortunately, he remembered that when he tidied up the space, he took out some unimportant things and stuffed them all over the room. This bottle of recovery medicine was one of them. He opened the bottle cap, handed the bottle of recovery medicine to Happy, and said softly, "Drink it." Happy was very obedient and nodded. She opened her mouth and drank it. Soon, the flesh on the wound was squirming quickly. It recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Happy's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at her right hand in disbelief. In just 5 minutes, her right hand was as good as new. Apart from the large amount of blood on her fingers, it was impossible to tell that she had been injured before. Emosher held Happy's right hand tightly and said softly, "Happy, does it still hurt?" Happy quickly shook her head. Emosher said again, "Don't worry, the medicine I injected you with before is an antibody to the virus. You won't become a zombie." When Happy heard this, the last trace of worry on her face disappeared. She smiled happily. At this time, she already understood that Brother Mo was really a mysterious powerhouse. Otherwise, who else could take out an antibody to the virus? The laboratory hadn't figured it out yet. Moreover, no one else could heal such a big wound in just 5 minutes. In addition, Brother Mo seemed to have crossed half of the yard in the blink of an eye to come to her side. Apart from the mysterious powerhouse, perhaps even those hunters couldn't be so fast. Emosher remembered that Happy had clearly seen him just now, but she didn't run to him. Instead, she ran far away. He couldn't help but feel pain in his heart again. He also knew that Happy might have already guessed that he was the mysterious powerhouse. But she was just guessing and didn't dare to be 100% sure. In that kind of situation just now, before she was 100% sure that he was the mysterious powerhouse, Happy would definitely not lead the zombies to his side. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel touched. He rubbed Happy's head and messed up her hair. Silly girl. Happy, on the other hand, cried. Happy tears. She just heard Brother Mo say that even if she became a zombie, he would still take care of her. When she thought of this, she held Emosher's hand tightly. However, Emosher's heart turned cold at this moment. How could the zombies in Happy's zombie room suddenly break free from the chains? If it was an accident, it would be fine. But if it was man-made, then they would have to bear the brunt of a level 10 psychokinesis. Chapter 83. 83. Murderer. After Happy took the recovery potion, his body recovered in a short 5 minutes. However, Emosher felt that there was something fishy about this. It was definitely not an accident. Outside the door, Oldly was still knocking on the door. Emosher opened the door and said, "Happy is fine." Oldly and Old Ma quickly looked over. They saw that not only did Happy not turn into a zombie, but the wound on his hand had also completely disappeared. Both of them were very surprised. Emosher looked at Old Ma and said, "There's something fishy about this." Old Ma nodded. Of course there was something fishy. However, he felt that Emosher was even more fishy. Happy was clearly bitten by a zombie, but he was brought into the room by Emosher. Not only did he not turn into a zombie, but the terrifying wound on the back of his hand had also completely disappeared. Was there anything more fishy than this? However, he was after all a general and someone who had been the chief of a base. With just a thought, he had already guessed most of it. He did not say anything. Everyone had their secrets. Since it was very likely that Emosher had already discovered his secret but had not made it public, then he naturally would not reveal Emosher's secret. He said to Oldly beside him, "Call a few people over to deal with the corpse. Don't mention Happy's injury for now." Although Oldly was an honest man, he was not a fool. Besides, he treated Emosher and Happy as his children. He knew that this matter could not be mentioned at this time. He immediately nodded. "I know." Then, he walked out. Emosher went to the morgue where the accident happened. He covered the entire room and the surroundings with his psychic power to investigate carefully. Soon, he found a clue. He saw that the end of the chain had a small opening. At first glance, this should be the chain that had been used for a long time. It had been worn very thin, which was why the zombie had used brute force to break free. However, Mosher knew that Happy was very careful. As long as he found that more than half of the chain was worn out, he would find someone to replace it with a new chain. Although this chain was not new, it was not worn out much. Furthermore, the age of the last ring was slightly different from that of the other rings. Normal people might not be able to notice this difference. However, Mosher had level 10 telekinesis. This small difference that was difficult to detect was as obvious as under a microscope in his eyes. On the surface, this chain looked no different from the other chains. But in fact, it had long been rusted beyond recognition. It was just that its surface had been treated so that it didn't look too old. It was obvious that someone had changed the chain in advance. In Mosher's heart, anger suddenly rose. It was man-made. Someone wanted to kill Happy. Perhaps it was not his weakness. Instead, it was directed at him. Mosher's expression was incomparably gloomy. His eyes were filled with killing intent. His immense telekinesis instantly spread out. It covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, everything could be as big as the overall layout of each building or as small as a fingerprint left behind by someone. Everything entered his mind. After reaching level 10, his telekinesis was already able to detect minute details. Fingerprints that were hard to see with the human eye were as obvious as a searchlight to him. Old Ma also came over at this time and asked, "What did you find?" Mosher shook his head. From the investigation of his telekinesis, he had not found anyone suspicious so far. Before finding the murderer, he did not want to tell anyone. At the same time, the people of the corpse hunting team also arrived. Now that there was a hunting group, the function of the corpse hunting team had been changed from hunting corpses to dealing with some chores. Their function was similar to the police before the apocalypse. The person of the corpse hunting team asked, "Is anyone injured?" Old Lee glanced at Happy, lowered his head, and answered, "No." The corpse hunters heaved a sigh of relief. Old Lee said again, "We all feel that something is not right about this matter." The captain of the corpse hunting team joked, "Why? Could it be that someone wants to harm a corpse keeper?" Old Ma's expression was solemn as he said, "Happy is a very careful girl. It's impossible that the chain is so badly worn and she didn't notice it. There must be something fishy about this matter. Please investigate carefully." When the captain of the corpse hunting team heard the previous chief say so, he immediately took it seriously. He asked the team members to investigate the scene carefully. In the end, they found that there was something wrong with the chain. "Have there been any suspicious people coming to the corpse farm recently? Or has anyone come to the corpse farm?" Old Ma thought about it and answered, "Suspicious people. No one else. Oh, by the way, the 2 people from base C2 came yesterday." The members of the corpse hunting team looked at each other, and they seemed to have understood something. Old Lee also reacted. "That's right, it must be them. Why did they come to our corpse farm for no reason? And ever since they came to our base has not been peaceful. First, Little Bean was attacked. Then, the mutated zombie ran out of the lab. Now, the zombies in the corpse farm mysteriously ran out. They must be the ones who did it." When Happy heard this, she seemed to have thought of something. She gestured with sign language. Old Lee translated. She said that when they came yesterday, she noticed that the man's gaze was malicious. When the woman looked at her, she seemed to be a little angry. "Those 2 bastards." Of course, the last sentence was Old Lee's own words. When Old Ma heard this, he pondered for a moment. He analyzed, "I noticed what Happy said at that time as well. That woman called Jin Shirshir was not angry, but she has always been a jealous woman." The corpse hunters nodded in agreement. Jealous women were the scariest. The captain said, "For now, the 2 people from base C2 are the most suspicious. And one of them is a hunter, and the other is a psychokinesis. It's easy for them to do all this. As for their motive, it's very likely that they want to destroy base C1 so that they can obtain our resources. Of course, this is just a preliminary guess. We still need to investigate further. In any case, let's take those two people into custody first. When Mo Shi heard this, anger surged in his heart. Killing intent burst out of his eyes. The captain of the corpse hunters led his men and quickly went to the two people's residence. At the same time, he had someone inform the body hunters. One of them was a hunter, and the other was a psychokinesis. If they really wanted to resist, the corpse hunters would not be able to handle them. At this time, the two people were already packing up and planning to leave by helicopter. The captain of the corpse hunters gritted his teeth and blocked the two people's path. Both of you, a case happened at the corpse farm today, and you two are the most suspicious. So, I can't let you leave. Zhen Shishir, who was dressed in leather, was instantly angry when she heard this. You were the one who chased us away, and now we want to leave, you are the one who is stopping us. Do you people from base C1 really think that a level 4 psychokinesis is easy to deal with? The corpse hunters knew that a level 4 psychokinesis was not to be trifled with. But at this time, they could only brace themselves. In short, when this matter is investigated clearly and there are no problems, you can leave. The woman stood upright and sneered, if we want to leave, who can stop us? As she spoke, she used her telekinesis. Thump, 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 all the corpse hunters at the scene knelt on the ground. These corpse hunters still wanted to resist. But Hao Ren had already attacked. Bang, 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 5 kicks in a row. The 5 corpse hunters were all sent flying more than 20 meters away. After landing, they rolled for another 5 or 6 meters before coming to a stop. They all vomited blood and coughed repeatedly. Chapter 84. 84 They're not the murderers. The man and woman had defeated the 5 members of the body hunters. Zhen Shishir snorted disdainfully and walked toward the helicopter. Hao Ren shrugged and said with a pained expression, that's right. I wanted to get along with you as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect to be alienated in return. With that, he strode toward the helicopter. However, at this moment, a few of the body hunters who lived nearby had rushed over. One of them even aimed a rocket launcher at the helicopter. Zhen Shishir frowned when she saw this. You're courting death. As she spoke, she unzipped her leather jacket. 48 flying daggers suddenly floated out from the leather jacket. They flew toward the body hunter who was holding the rocket launcher. Puff, 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 puff. In almost an instant, the arms of the body hunter with the rocket launcher were dripping with blood. The other body hunters wanted to attack. However, the 48 flying daggers kept shuttling back and forth on their bodies. Puff, 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 the sound of the sharp daggers piercing into flesh was heard. Moreover, this woman did not kill these body hunters directly. Instead, she let the 48 flying daggers cut through their limbs and bodies, making them suffer the pain of their bodies being cut. At this moment, a shadow in the distance flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh, in almost 2 seconds, it had arrived in front of them. Hao Ren snorted when he saw this. He threw a punch at the shadow. Bang! That shadow was instantly blown apart by the explosion. A cloud of dark green smoke suddenly spread out in all directions. Oh no, we've been tricked. Hao Ren quickly covered his nose. Zhen Shishir also held her breath. However, it was too late. Although the two of them had only inhaled 1 breath. However, their consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. It turned out that after the incident with the body hunters last time, the laboratory had set up a special project to develop a weapon to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. In the end, they developed this high-strength anesthetic bomb. As long as the anesthetic bomb exploded, hunters and psychokinesis inhaled the high-strength anesthetic inside the bomb would be anesthetized in just 10 seconds. Zhen Shishir fell to the ground in just 2 seconds. Hao Ren held on for 10 seconds, but in the end, he couldn't hold on. He cursed, "It's hard to be a good person." He fell to the ground. After a moment, he lost consciousness. It was not until then that the two hunters of the body hunters appeared. They took these two people. That afternoon, almost everyone knew about this. Everyone in the entire base was burning with anger. They spontaneously came to the detention room where the two men were being held and cursed and roared. "These two fellows are definitely up to no good. Since they've been here, they've... It's this the gods' laws." They hurt the hunters and used throwing knives to cut the hunters' hands and feet instead of giving them a quick death. "They're animals. He's just like Lu Nian and Lu Wang. Kill them." "No, they're so cruel. They should be burned to death. Burn them. Burn them." Because of Lu Wang and Lu Nian, the people of Base C1 didn't trust outsiders very much. Now, the actions of these two people had finally ignited everyone's anger. In the end, it was Guo Jutao, the leader of the body hunters, who came. He persuaded everyone, "They've done such a thing. Everyone wants to kill them. I'm no exception. But there's a procedure for everything. This matter needs to be further interrogated to determine their guilt. Only then can they be punished. So everyone should go back first. When there's a result here, I'll inform everyone immediately." At first, everyone still didn't agree. But they still respected the leader of the body hunters. In the end, after more than 10 minutes of persuasion by Guo Jutao, everyone left. At this time, Mo Shi was walking step by step toward the detention center. No one knew how much anger Mo Shi needed to vent at this time. When he was only 1,000 meters away from the detention center, he had already spread out his telekinesis. He could clearly detect that Guo Jutao was personally interrogating the two people in the detention center. Hao Ren was really panicking at this time. He thought that with their strength, they could do whatever they wanted in this base. But he didn't expect that they would be easily subdued by a strong anesthetic bomb. This base C1 could actually develop such a thing. It seemed that the base still needed a laboratory. As for Jin Shishir, although she wasn't as panicked as Hao Ren, there was a trace of regret and panic in her eyes. Guo Jutao entered the detention center and looked at the two people who were tied up like dumplings. He said coldly, "Speak." Hao Ren shook his head repeatedly. "Leader, I can swear to God that we didn't do it." "Absolutely not." Guo Jutao snorted and said to the people outside, "Send this guy to the zombie farm to feed the zombies." Immediately, someone came in and dragged Hao Ren out. Outside the door, Hao Ren made a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. "What I said is true, leader." Guo Jutao didn't care at all. He looked at Jin Shishir and said, "It's your turn." Jin Shishir's face turned pale. At this time, she no longer had the arrogance from before. She said with a trembling voice, "It's not us, we didn't do anything." "Humph, you didn't do anything." Attacking a captain, mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory, zombies in the zombie farm broke free from the chains. Since you came, strange things have happened one after another. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you? The woman in leather shook her head repeatedly. "It's really not us." Guo Jutao nodded. "Well, then I'll ask another question. You can't deny that you used a flying knife to hurt those zombie hunters. And you didn't kill them directly, but tortured them cruelly with a flying knife. What can't a person like you do?" The woman in leather shook her head again. I didn't torture them, I just wanted to scare them away. Otherwise, they would have been killed long ago." Guo Jutao obviously didn't believe this. He nodded. "Well, you still don't want to tell the truth. You'll be fed to the zombies later." About a kilometer away from the detention room, Mo Shi, whose heart was burning with rage, suddenly stopped in his tracks. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he could detect slight changes in people's brain waves. When people lie, the frequency of their brain waves will be slightly faster than when they tell the truth. When the man and woman were being interrogated just now, their brainwave frequency did not change at all from the usual while they were speaking. This was enough to show that what the two said was true. All the previous signs pointed to the two of them as the culprits. But now he suddenly found that these two people weren't the murderers. Mosher frowned. If it wasn't them, then who? If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Could it be that the clues were cut off here? Chapter 85. If these two people were not the murderer, then who could it be? Mosher frowned. He had been living a carefree life before. He rarely used his brain. At most, he would think about where to check in and how to get evolution points. When did he solve a case? But after a while, he thought of someone. From the looks of it, Xiaodou was attacked, the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, and the zombie chain in the zombie farm was changed. These three things were very likely to be related. Then Xiaodou was the key person. Thinking of this, he immediately strode to the hospital. Xiaodou's injuries were more serious. Although a week had passed, he was still in the intensive care unit. Mosher came to Xiaodou's ward. The intensive care unit was not a place that anyone could enter. He told the nurse that Xiaodou was once his colleague. The nurse hesitated for a moment and asked the doctor. Finally, she entered the ward and asked Xiaodou. Then she walked out and whispered to Mosher. Don't let the patient speak. You only have 5 minutes. Mosher nodded and entered the intensive care unit. In the intensive care unit, a strong smell of medicine assailed his nose. The room was very quiet. Only the sound of the ECG monitor could be heard. Beep, beep, it was like a countdown to life. Mosher came to the bedside and saw that Xiaodou's eyes were tightly shut. He seemed to be in pain. He paused for a moment and said, Xiaodou. When Xiaodou heard this, his eyelids trembled a few times and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered and he seemed to be a little excited. He opened his mouth with difficulty. I have been waiting for you. When he spoke, it was as if there was something stuck in his throat. It was uncomfortable to hear. Mosher nodded. Go ahead. Xiaodou opened his mouth again with difficulty. The person who injured me was not planning to attack me. He was planning to attack you. Mosher heard this and his eyes flickered. He looked at Xiaodou. This meant that Xiaodou took a bullet for him. He had always thought that Xiaodou was selfish and only cared about himself. He did not expect that he would take a bullet for him. Xiaodou's throat made a noise. He panted for a moment before continuing. I may be selfish in small matters, but you are the guardian of the base. The base cannot live without you. Mosher looked at Xiaodou, his heart stirring slightly. You saw the murderer. Little Bean gasped for breath with difficulty and said, his face was covered, but I am very sensitive to a person's body shape. As long as I see his figure, I will be able to recognize him. Mosher nodded. When you recover tomorrow, I'll bring everyone in the base to you for you to recognize. His tone was filled with boundless dominance and ice-cold killing intent. That night, when Mosher signed in, he didn't sign any more enhancers. Instead, he signed 10 bottles of recovery potion. He had been too careless in the past. He believed that with his strength, there were very few things in the base that could hurt him. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to the recovery potion. The effect of the recovery potion was too heaven-defying. It was impossible for him to casually give it to others. Hence, he did not have a lot of recovery medicine in stock, and he had already given Happy his last bottle during the day. But after this incident, Mosher understood. He still had to prepare a few bottles of recovery potion on a daily basis. Although he might not be able to use it himself, and he was not a saint who would casually give it to others. But he could not guarantee that under special circumstances, he would use it to save the lives of key people. Just like now. Mosher did not delay. After getting the recovery potion, he immediately rushed to the hospital. However, when he was more than 900 meters away from the hospital, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He spread out his psychokinesis. In an instant, everything within a radius of 1,000 meters had nowhere to hide. Sure enough, he detected a figure near the flower bed behind the hospital's inpatient department building. Moreover, this person was a psychokinesis. He was controlling a throwing knife to fly toward the window on the second floor. And that window was the window of Xiao Dou's intensive care unit. When Emosher saw this, the killing intent in his eyes appeared again. The berserk pressure instantly pressed down on him. The black figure only felt as if there was an overwhelming pressure around him that pressed down on him. His psychokinesis was suppressed back into his body in an instant. The throwing knife fell into the flower bed under the window. He was shocked in his heart. His eyes were full of panic and he hurriedly tried to escape. However, the next moment, Emosher's figure crossed more than 900 meters in an instant and was already in front of him. In the place where Emosher just stood, under the moonlight, there was only a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon's shadow left. After a while, the shadow slowly dissipated. When the black figure saw Emosher suddenly appear, he was even more terrified. He obviously knew Emosher's strength and knew that in front of Emosher, he had no chance of escaping at all. Emosher's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Speak. He only spat out this word that was as cold as a knife. The black figure's face was terrified, but he shook his head. No. I can't, before his voice died away. He felt a violent and unparalleled psychokinesis rush into his brain in an instant. The next moment, his brain went blank. His whole person was stunned on the spot. There was no longer any fear on his face. He looked around foolishly. Just like a fool. This was the skill that Emosher had signed in, memory plunder. With an unparalleled psychokinesis, he could forcibly plunder other people's memories. And the intelligence of those who had their memories plundered would be greatly reduced in an instant, or even directly become an idiot. In Emosher's mind, there were many more memories. From these memories, he saw the person who issued the mission to psychokinesis. It was a man wearing a black mask and camouflage clothes. The man with the black mask had a rough voice. He said, I didn't expect that after we carefully arranged so many clues to lead him to those two people, he still saw through it. We were careless and didn't kill the captain in advance. Go tonight and kill the captain. Emosher saw the masked man's figure from the memory of psychokinesis. For him, who was at level 10 psychokinesis, his sensitivity to the figure was far beyond that of ordinary people. Next, he just needed to find this person in the base. Then, he would be able to find the real culprit behind the scenes. At this moment, psychokinesis, who had already become a fool, slowly moved his feet. He walked into the distance unconsciously. Emosher moved his psychokinesis. Bang, there was a soft sound. That person's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. These people, no matter who they were targeting, they had almost killed him. Then, they didn't even have the right to be fools. There was only one result for them. Death. Emosher didn't pay attention to his corpse. With a leap, he had already arrived at the window on the second floor. He pushed open the window and entered the room. In the room, the nurse who accompanied Xiao Dou was taking a nap. Xiao Dou was also sleeping. Emosher took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He opened Xiao Dou's mouth and poured it down his throat. Then, he jumped out of the ward. He spread out his psychokinesis and explored an area with a diameter of 2 kilometers. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the hospital like a black light with endless murderous intent. Chapter 86. In the base, under the moonlight. Emosher was like a black shadow that carried boundless killing intent as he flashed past at high speed. Although he did not see the masked man's face from the memory he plundered, he remembered his figure. As a level 10 psychokinesis, he could detect fingerprints. He was even more sensitive to the figure. Ordinary people's perception of the figure was at most the overall impression of height, weight, age, gender, and so on. But psychokinesis could split these overall impressions into countless parts. How wide the shoulders were, how tall the person was, and how much he weighed. How big his ears were, how far apart his legs were, how long his feet were, and how long his fingers were. Psychics only needed to use their psychic power to scan the area, and they would be able to tell what was going on. And M.O. Scher's telekinesis had reached level 10, which was even more exaggerated. As long as he swept with his telekinesis, he could clearly see how many eyebrows there were. Therefore, to ordinary people, this small difference was as conspicuous as the brilliant sun in his eyes. In addition to his telekinesis radius of 1,000 meters, the diameter was 2,000 meters. He jumped forward at a speed of 190 meters per second. His whole body was like a radar scanning a diameter of 2,000 meters, moving forward quickly. Not a single person in the base could hide from his mind. With his speed, it would only take him 10 minutes to sweep the entire base. When M.O. Scher's scan reached the 5th minute, in the hospital's intensive care unit, Little Bean, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he felt something strange in his body. There was no longer the strange feeling in his throat. The wound near his heart no longer hurt. He could even feel that his body was full of power. In surprise, he touched the wound on his chest. There was no pain. He quickly tore the gauze on his chest. There was no wound on his chest. It had long been completely healed. Looking at the intact skin on his chest, his eyes widened. Before he went to sleep, he was half dead. He even doubted if he could ever recover. But when he woke up, his body had completely recovered. Even if he experienced it personally, he still could not believe it. What was going on? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse? Yes, it must be him. During the day, the mysterious powerhouse came. And at that time, he had said, "When you recover tomorrow." He recovered by himself at night. It was definitely him. Apart from the mysterious expert, he could not think of anyone else. This made him even more amazed by the mysterious expert's ability. Previously, he only knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, so strong that it was unbelievable. But now, he realized that the mysterious expert was not only powerful, but also had such a strange ability. He was able to recover from his serious injuries in just a few hours. To put it in an exaggerated manner, this was simply akin to regenerating flesh and bones from the dead. How could the mysterious expert be so strong? Thinking of this, he jumped off the bed, went to the closet next to him, and took out his clothes. He tore off the hospital gown and threw it aside. After changing into his own clothes, he immediately felt much more comfortable. The mysterious expert had said that when he recovered, he would bring everyone to him so that he could identify the murderer. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. The nurse who was dozing off next to him was awakened by the noise made by Xiao Dou. He was instantly shocked. Who is it? She thought that someone else had broken into the room. And the light in the room was dim, so she could not see clearly at all. Xiao Dou replied, "It's me. It's all Xiao Dou." The nurse did not believe it at all. Little Bean looked like he was on the verge of death. How could it be him? She hurried to the door of the ward. He cried out in fear, "Someone come quickly, save me, save me." Suddenly, the people on the entire floor were awakened by her sharp cry for help. 2 doctors on duty and more than a dozen nurses all ran out. The nurse looked back at the figure in the room and shouted, "Someone broke into the ward. Hurry, hurry." Everyone was shocked and hurried to the door of the ward. A male doctor wearing glasses strode into the room and slapped the light switch. He shouted to the others, "Protect the patient." As he spoke, he picked up the chair next to him and faced the figure. The others also rushed into the room and went to the bedside. This person broke into the ward in the middle of the night and was likely to harm the patient. However, the other doctor saw that there was no one on the bed except for the bedding. He immediately exclaimed, "Where is he?" Everyone also looked at the bed. Sure enough, there was no patient on the bed. Then, everyone looked at the intruder. What did you do to the patient? The male doctor wearing glasses questioned angrily. But halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped. Everyone else was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? They just felt that this person was very similar to the patient. But in a hurry, they did not have time to take a closer look. Now that they looked at it, this person was more than just similar to the patient. They were exactly the same. The biggest similarity was that they were both cross-eyed. Xiaodou was a little embarrassed at this moment and said, "Well, it's me." Xiaodou. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this sentence. The accompanying nurse looked at Little Bean from head to toe in surprise and asked tentatively, "What's wrong?" Are you really Captain Xiaodou?" Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, "Who else could it be other than me? I'm really sorry to scare everyone." Sorry. When everyone heard him admit it and saw the hospital gown thrown aside by him, they were all in disbelief. Is he really Captain Xiaodou? What's going on? Especially his attending doctor and accompanying nurse. Both of them looked at Xiaodou as if they had seen a ghost. They knew their patient best. Only 3 hours ago, he was still in a critical period. He could lose his life at any time. But when he woke up, he was alive and kicking. Could it be any more exaggerated? Xiaodou wanted to explain, but he could not think of any words after thinking for a long time. In the end, he could only honestly say, "Maybe, the mysterious strong man saved me." When everyone heard this, instead of being relieved, they were even more surprised. Do you mean that the mysterious strong man is a doctor? A doctor with great medical skills? He has been hiding in our hospital all this time. Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know. In short, I think it should be the mysterious strong man. I can't think of any other explanation except for him." The male doctor wearing glasses said in shock. "The most important thing now is to do a comprehensive examination of your body. Nurse Li, go and invite the dean here. We must let the dean know about this." Nurse Li was the nurse who screamed just now. She nodded quickly in surprise. "Okay, I'll go now." With that, she squeezed through the crowd and walked outside. Her footsteps were extremely fast and she went far away. She was wearing flat shoes, but she walked with the momentum of high heels. A moment later, in the courtyard, Nurse Li's scream came again. Ah! Chapter 87. Ah! In the hospital's courtyard, Xiao Li's sharp scream was like a sharp blade, cutting through the night sky. Everyone in the ICU felt a chill run down their spines. What happened to Xiao Li this time? They hurried downstairs and came to the courtyard. Then, they saw a headless body lying in the courtyard. Everyone was shocked. This is psychokinesis. Quick, call the hunter group. If it was psychokinesis, the hunter group couldn't do it. They could only call the hunter group. Soon, the members of the hunter group were invited over. After carefully inspecting the scene, they found 11 throwing knives on the headless body. Then, they found a 12th throwing knife in the flower bed downstairs of the inpatient department. This person is psychokinesis. A member of the hunter group said. The other person frowned and said, and the way he was shot in the head also seems to be psychokinesis. Then, the two of them looked at each other. There was a hint of awe in their eyes. The dean next to them asked, "Do you know who the murderer is?" The two of them didn't say. They only said, "This matter needs to be further investigated." Then, they asked someone to take the body back. The two members of the hunter group had probably guessed who did it. There were only 2 psychokinesis in the entire base. One was the woman in base C2. But she was now in the detention room and had been injected with a drug that could suppress her psychic power. She couldn't escape at all, let alone kill anyone. The other was the mysterious powerhouse. But they had seen the mysterious powerhouse's methods. He blew up the head without saying anything. He tore people apart without saying anything. Just thinking about it made their scalps tingle. Of course, they didn't dare to say it in public. This matter had to be decided by the leader. At the same time, Emosher finally stopped after sweeping through half of the base. His psychic power fell under the water tower. There was a room under the water tower. There was only one person in the room. This person was pacing back and forth. Obviously, he was waiting for a reply. This person's figure completely overlapped with the figure in the memory he had just plundered, whether it was the whole body or a part of it. At this moment, he was not wearing a mask. However, Emosher was 100% sure that he was the masked man in Psychokinesis's memory. He took a step forward. Rumble, the door of the room, which had been reinforced with steel plates, flew out of the room. The tables, chairs, and cabinets in the room were smashed into pieces. That person was startled and hurriedly spread out his telekinesis. However, very quickly, his telekinesis seemed to be suppressed by a huge mountain. It was instantly suppressed back into his body. He looked up in shock. There was already a person standing in his room. This person looked to be in his 20s. His camouflage uniform had already turned black. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Emosher's cold gaze swept over this person. The water tower was located in Area F, which was quite far from the zombie farm. Emosher had come here a few times in the past 7 or 8 years just to sign in. However, after discovering that the water tower could only produce a few bottles of water at most, he never came again. Who would have thought that old Zhang the water tower was actually a psychokinesis? And he had been hiding it all this time. Emosher's voice was cold. Speak, who ordered you to do this? Old Zhang looked at Emosher and retreated, shaking his head. I don't. In the next moment, his voice abruptly stopped. An enormous amount of telekinesis had already surged into his brain. And his memories were instantly plundered. His brain was also severely damaged. His mind was blank. He was also dumbfounded on the spot. Emosher checked these memories. Soon, he confirmed another person. He did not hesitate at all. He turned around. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the room. At the same time, old Zhang, who was like a fool, also had his head explode with a bang. The room was not big to begin with, and the walls and floor were covered in blood. The headless corpse fell straight to the ground. The furniture debris on the ground was smashed into the air. Emosher recalled the figure of the person he had just seen in old Zhang's memory. He compared it to everyone in the base that he had just scanned. Soon, he confirmed who it was. He strode towards the garbage incinerator in Area C. A group of patrolling members only saw a black shadow approaching from afar at a fast speed. Before they could react, it brushed past them. Then it flew into the distance. Their hearts trembled. Not good, there's an attacker. However, they did not have time to inform the others. They felt their heads swell, their vision went black, and they fainted one after another. At this moment, Emosher was in a hurry to track down the mastermind behind the scenes. He would not allow anything to hinder his investigation. Soon, from the garbage incinerator, Emosher followed the clues and found the sewage treatment plant in Area W, the farm in Area N, and the cafeteria in Area S. These people were very cunning. Basically, they had one-way connections. And these people were all psychokinesis. Although their telekinesis was not high, at most level 2 psychokinesis. But there were so many psychokinesis in the base, and they were all hidden and never exposed. Obviously, there must be someone or some force behind them. But this force was hidden so deeply in the base. It was really strange. However, Emosher did not think about this at all. With such a domineering skill like memory plunder, no matter what strength you had, no matter how deep you hid, you could follow the clues and find out. Only 25 minutes had passed since he left the hospital, and Emosher had already found more than 30 hidden psychokinesis. In the end, he finally found a key person in the memories of a repairman. He saw that the person was wearing a wide bamboo hat. Under the shadow of the bamboo hat, his face could not be seen clearly. He always had his arms crossed, and in his arms was a slender sword about 1.5 meters long. He looked like a Jianghu hero. From the memories of others that he had obtained before, he often heard the word hero. Obviously, this hero was the mastermind behind the scenes. After receiving this information, Mosher turned his head. He instantly left the repair field. His telekinesis covered a diameter of 2,000 meters, searching for the hero's figure. At the same time, the hunter group had also received the news. In just 20 minutes, they had found 3 headless corpses and 5 unconscious patrols. The leader, Guo Jitao, frowned. He had already guessed that this was very likely the work of the mysterious powerhouse. But what was the reason for this? Although the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and ruthless, but he had never killed for no reason before. He thought of what happened today. He thought of the zombies that suddenly ran out of the zombie farm and almost bit the mute girl. It seemed that he must have angered Mosher. With his understanding of Mosher, even if he was angered, he would not casually kill unrelated people. It seemed that he must have found something. Chapter 88. Midnight. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Other than the few people on night watch, almost everyone else in the hunting group was mobilized. They all knew that something big would definitely happen tonight. At the same time, Mosher had already used his telekinesis to scan the entire base. However, he didn't find anyone similar to that chivalrous man. Could it be that that person wasn't in the base? However, after thinking about it for a moment, Mosher thought of 2 possibilities. Since that chivalrous man often had to command these psychokinesis, then he couldn't stay outside the base. The reason why his telekinesis couldn't detect them was because they were hiding underground. Now, Mosher's telekinesis could penetrate buildings. But there was a limit. If they hid dozens of meters underground, his telekinesis couldn't penetrate. And in the entire base, there were 2 such places. One was an emergency shelter. At first, the emergency shelter was to avoid nuclear bomb attacks. The depth and thickness were naturally needless to say. The other was the laboratory. In order to prevent the virus from leaking out, the other 9 floors of the laboratory were built underground except for the 1 floor on the ground. Mosher wasn't far from the laboratory at this time. He immediately tapped his feet lightly. In a moment, he had already arrived outside the laboratory door. Without any hesitation, he was about to blast open the laboratory door. However, at this moment, roar, in the laboratory, a beast-like roar came out. In the next moment, the laboratory door was blasted out from inside. It smashed straight towards Mosher. Mosher's telekinesis moved slightly, and the door deviated from its trajectory. It flew past his side. It smashed into a tree 50 meters away. Crack, the tree immediately let out a crisp sound and was broken in the middle. At the same time, from the laboratory door, 23 tall shadows jumped out in a row. Each shadow was more than 3 meters tall. There were barbs on their shoulders. Some of their arms turned into 100-meter-long tentacles. Some of their arms turned into biochemical shields that were taller than a person. Some of their bodies were covered in thick plate armor. They were all mutated zombies. Roar, 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 the man-made mutated zombies in these laboratories were much stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. Such a man-made mutated zombie could probably reach the strength of a level 10 zombie hunter. However, it was clear that Mosher had underestimated the strength of these zombies. They roared furiously and charged towards Mosher. Based on their speed and strength, Mosher had judged that the strength of these mutated zombies was much stronger than the 2 he had seen before. Every single one of them was probably a level 8 or level 9 hunter. At the same time, a figure slowly walked out from the entrance of the laboratory. Under the moonlight, the figure was wearing a bamboo hat. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. In his arms was a long and narrow sword. Swordsman. He finally showed his face. At the same time, the patrol team and the corpse hunting team in Area A heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw more than 20 mutated zombies, they were all dumbfounded. In the past, when a mutant zombie ran out of the laboratory, they couldn't do anything. But now, so many of them had appeared. Wouldn't it be over if the hunting group didn't come over as soon as possible? But just as they were panicking, the hunting group had already arrived. The leader, Guojutao, saw the situation at the entrance of the laboratory. He also saw Mo Shi. But tonight, Mo Shi was different from before. In the past, Mo Shi always gave people a feeling of being calm and natural, standing aloof from worldly affairs. But tonight, Mo Shi seemed to have an incomparably dense murderous aura. Under this strong murderous aura, Mo Shi didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. He seemed to want everyone to know that if they provoked him, they would die. Seeing this, Guojutao waved his hand to the group members who had rushed over behind him. He signaled them to step back. All the group members were stunned. More than 20 mutated zombies ran out, and they didn't care. What's more, these zombies were rushing towards the figure under the moonlight. They didn't want to save this person. Guojutao stared at the group members and said, "That person, it won't be a problem to deal with these zombies." Everyone was stunned. Was this a joke? Their hunting group might not be able to deal with more than 20 man-made mutated zombies. That person could do it. How could they understand the leader's painstaking efforts? In the eyes of the leader, Guojutao, the mysterious strong man, Mo Shi, was full of violent murderous aura. It was likely that he would attack with all his strength. With Mo Shi's strength, if he attacked with all his strength, just the aftermath alone could easily kill the hunting group members. If these group members really went up, wouldn't they be courting death? At this time, those mutated zombies, when more than 20 meters in front of Mo Shi, actually separated and formed a circle. They surrounded Mo Shi in the middle. The zombies even began to talk about tactics. But they didn't immediately attack Mo Shi. Instead, they stood quietly. They seemed to be waiting for some order. The swordsman spoke. His voice was changed, and it was very hoarse. It was as if he had smoked too much. "I knew you would find out sooner or later, but I didn't expect it to be so fast." As expected of the mysterious strong man. Mo Shi's murderous eyes looked coldly at the swordsman at the door of the laboratory. The swordsman saw that Mo Shi didn't speak, so he spoke again. "These mutated zombies, each of them has reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. And one of them has reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. I didn't have the chance to test their combat strength before, but today, I met you, the mysterious strong man, so I can test it." Then, he waved his hand. The 23 mutated zombies suddenly roared. They all rushed towards Mo Shi. The weapons in their hands, sharp blades, claws, spears, whips, tentacles. Almost at the same time, they attacked Mo Shi. Every weapon that was thrown out carried unparalleled power, and the sound of wind whistling could be heard. Guojutao, who was in the distance, saw the attacks of these mutated zombies and couldn't help but tremble. The group members behind him all felt a chill in their hearts. If it were them, they wouldn't even be able to take one hit from such an attack. The speed was too fast, and the strength was too strong. As the figure said, they had reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. One of them had even reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. It held a 3-meter-long giant sword in its hand. In just one step, it came in front of Mo Shi. The giant sword in its hand was like thunder. It slashed towards Mo Shi. This time, the power was extremely terrifying. When the sword was in the air, there was a faint flame. It was conceivable that if it hit, even a level 10 hunter might not be able to withstand it. The members of the hunting group in the distance were all shocked by what they saw. These mutated zombies were too strong. If their hunting group went up, they would probably be wiped out today. However, the giant sword in the hand of the mutated zombie had just reached Mo Shi. Rip, there was a crisp sound, and blood splattered. The mutated zombie with the giant sword was instantly torn into several pieces. Its huge head spun in the air. Chapter 89. Rip, there was a crisp sound of cloth being torn apart. The mutated zombie that was as strong as a level 10 hunter was torn into pieces in an instant. Blood splattered under the moonlight. The light reflected off the blood was a wine-red color. The members of the hunter group gasped when they saw this scene from afar. Someone said, "This is the mysterious powerhouse." It really is the mysterious powerhouse. I think I know him. He's Emosure from our zombie farm in Area A. The members of the hunter group who had been to base C9 before, even if they knew that Emosure was the mysterious powerhouse, couldn't help but gasp. The last time they saw this scene, they were at the entrance of the hunter group's headquarters. But the strongest person that the mysterious powerhouse tore apart was only a level 5 hunter. But now, he could use his telekinesis to tear apart mutated zombies that were as strong as level 10 hunters. In other words, all hunters below level 10, including level 10 hunters. In front of him, they were all ants that he could tear apart easily. The mysterious powerhouse's strength was insane. At the entrance of the laboratory, Vigilante was stunned when he saw this scene. The strength of the mysterious powerhouse's telekinesis was far beyond his imagination. However, there was no panic in his eyes. Instead, he looked at Emosure with interest. In the next moment, the 22 mutated zombies came to within 5 meters of Emosure at almost the same time. Their weapons were less than half a meter away from Emosure. But, rip, almost at the same time, all 22 mutated zombies were torn into pieces. Broken limbs flew and blood splattered. At the same time, along with the flying pieces, 22 clouds of dark green smoke exploded around Emosure. Bang 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 bang, in just a moment, Emosure was enveloped by the smoke. Vigilante's hoarse voice came from the entrance of the laboratory. I knew that you would tear these zombies apart in your anger. So, except for the first mutated zombie, every other mutated zombie was stuffed with more than 10 strong anesthetic bullets. Even a level 10 hunter wouldn't last more than 3 seconds under so many tranquilizer bullets. What do you think of the effect? Everyone in the hunter group saw this scene from afar. They were all worried for the mysterious powerhouse. The man and woman from base C2 were easily taken care of by a single anesthetic bullet. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, even the mysterious powerhouse would die. After all, anesthetic bullets were originally developed to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. Although they didn't know who the person at the entrance of the laboratory was, he was definitely not a good person to release so many mutated zombies to deal with the mysterious powerhouse. And if something happened to the mysterious powerhouse, who could deal with him? However, a moment later, when the large cloud of dark green smoke was blown by a gust of wind, everyone's gazes focused. Under the moonlight, Emosure's figure stood there. He was motionless. Killing intent spread out from his body. At the entrance of the laboratory, seeing this, the chivalrous man's eyes finally revealed a trace of panic. He thought of all kinds of accidents. But he didn't expect that the mysterious powerhouse wasn't even afraid of anesthetic bullets. One had to know that these strong anesthetic bullets had been specially processed. The amount of drugs in each anesthetic bullet was enough to easily anesthetize a level 10 hunter. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, the mysterious powerhouse didn't show any signs of being anesthetized. This was simply inhuman. Of course, he didn't know that Emosure had a recovery potion. The recovery potion was extremely effective. It could restore stamina, heal wounds, and remove toxins in one. It could even beautify the skin, delay aging, remove crow's feet, and remove melasma. Even if he was hit by so many anesthetic bullets, he only needed a bottle of recovery potion. He would recover in a moment. At this moment, Emosure's telekinesis spread out. It pressed down on the vigilante. However, he found something strange when his telekinesis pressed down. This person's body was emitting a strange telekinesis that resisted Emosure's pressure. At the same time, the long sword in his hand was unsheathed. He used his telekinesis to control this long and narrow sword and stabbed it toward Immortal. Although there was only one long sword, it gave people the feeling that it was 100 times sharper than the other psychokinesis flying knives. Under the moonlight, the long sword flashed coldly. Almost instantly, it was in front of Immortal. Immortal had already detected that the telekinesis output from this person's brain was at most level 5 psychokinesis. But under his bamboo hat was a special metal ring. And with the help of this metal ring, this person's telekinesis was greatly enhanced. It could actually reach level 9 or even level 10. Immortal had heard the people in the laboratory talk about the brainwave amplification device when he had nothing to do. It seemed that this metal ring was that thing. That person's eyes were filled with determination. That long sword, under the control of his level 10 telekinesis, was extremely fast. It even broke through the speed of sound and created a sonic boom. Seeing this scene, the hunters in the distance all sucked in a breath of cold air. If that sword attacked them, none of them would be able to block it. Even the genetic martial arts of the hunters would not be able to. However, Immortal only retracted his telekinesis. The telekinesis that had spread to a diameter of 2,000 meters suddenly gathered into a beam. It went straight for the chivalrous man. Just imagine, a huge amount of telekinesis within a diameter of 2,000 meters was gathered together at this moment. How terrifying would that be? Under the impact of this torrent-like telekinesis. That long sword that seemed to be able to split mountains and seas was almost instantly broken into more than a dozen pieces. And each piece was crushed into scrap metal by the huge telekinesis. The torrent-like telekinesis continued to rush forward. Seeing this, the chivalrous man's expression changed. He originally thought that by using the brainwave amplification device and forcefully raising his telekinesis to level 10, he would be able to fight against the mysterious expert. In the end, he realized that his thoughts were simply laughable. Although they were both level 10. But telekinesis of the same level was also divided into strong and weak. How could his telekinesis, which was forcefully raised, be compared to Immortal's telekinesis that was strengthened through the brain cell enhancer? How could a firefly compete with the bright moon? Immortal's torrent-like telekinesis actually blasted on his body as if it was solid. That person was instantly sent flying. He directly crashed into the laboratory door and through several walls behind him. Out of the laboratory. He flew more than 300 meters away. Only then did he fall to the ground. Pfft! A cloud of blood mist suddenly spat out from his mouth. He was extremely shocked. Telekinesis could actually have such a powerful impact. But in the next moment, the shock in his eyes turned into pain. Extreme pain. In the past, when Immortal dealt with psychokinesis, he only suppressed their telekinesis back into their bodies. But this time, he directly crushed this person's telekinesis. Suppression and crushing were two completely different concepts. Suppression meant that although the telekinesis was suppressed back into the body, it was still intact. And crushing meant that Immortal's telekinesis directly rushed into the other party's brain. It destroyed the other party's brain cells that could produce telekinesis. It forcibly destroyed this person's telekinesis. 300 meters away, that person only felt a buzzing sound in his brain. In the next moment, there was an intense pain in his head. It was so painful that he couldn't stand up at all. He held his head with both hands, kept rolling, twisting, and screaming. Immortal moved his telekinesis, lifted this person up, and moved him in front of him. His eyes looked straight at this person. In his cold eyes, murderous intent was revealed. Even in extreme pain, that person could feel that he was enveloped by murderous intent. He said with difficulty, "No. Don't kill me. I mean no harm." Crack! Immortal moved his telekinesis. The bamboo hat on his head was directly torn into two pieces and flew far away. Under the bamboo hat, a face appeared. A woman. This woman was very beautiful. She had cherry lips, slender legs, and a ponytail. In the distance, a few people in the hunting group saw this face and couldn't help but exclaim, "Captain Ma." Chapter 90. Under the Moonlight. The person who was suspended in the air by Immortal's telekinesis had his large bamboo hat torn off. The next moment, a woman's face was revealed. It was a very beautiful face. The most eye-catching thing was that after her bamboo hat fell off, her ponytailed hair fell down from the back of her head. Seeing this scene, a member of the hunting group suddenly exclaimed, "That's right. Leader Ma." This person turned out to be Ma Wei, Leader Ma, who had pretended to be a mysterious powerhouse a few years ago. She was seen through and left the base later. Her nickname was Sister Ponytail. Recognizing Sister Ponytail, the members of the hunting group were all in disbelief. Leader Ma had left for several years. She was alone in the wilderness. Everyone thought that she had died a long time ago. They did not expect that she would appear in the base's laboratory. And she had such powerful strength. She could even control mutated zombies. But why did she want to be an enemy of the mysterious powerhouse? Everyone racked their brains but could not figure this out. Only Immortal was a little surprised. As early as the moment he saw this mysterious powerhouse, his telekinesis had already detected that it was a woman. He just did not expect this woman to be Sister Ponytail. However, no matter who it was, if they dared to provoke him, there would only be one outcome. Death. At this moment, Sister Ponytail was still holding her head in pain and struggling. She said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill me. I have something to say." However, in the next moment, she felt that her mind was blank. There was no fear in her eyes. There was only the constant pain in her head. At this moment, she had become an idiot without any intelligence. Immortal would not give her any chance. He would not talk nonsense with her, not even a word. No matter what reason you had, since you almost killed Happy, your ending was already set. As for what you had to say, there was no need. Immortal checked Sister Ponytail's memory in his mind. It turned out that after Sister Ponytail left the base, she wandered alone in the wilderness. At that time, she was a level 4 psychokinesis. When she encountered mutated beasts and mutated zombies, she could deal with them. Over time, through continuous fighting, her telekinesis quickly increased and reached level 5. Furthermore, her psychokinesis had mutated. The mutated psychokinesis could stimulate other people's brain cells and cause them to suffer from psychokinesis. This was also the reason why Immortal noticed a lot of psychokinesis tonight. At the same time, she could also control the thoughts of the person whose psychokinesis was triggered by her. Psychokinesis that Immortal had found out about was naturally controlled by her. After obtaining these abilities, she felt that these abilities would be useful to the base, so she quietly returned to the base and found her uncle, Chief Ma Yongshi. At that time, Ma Yongshi was preparing to restart Project X, and Project X required the use of psychokinesis. He arranged for her to enter the laboratory. Now, Project X had been preliminarily completed. With her powerful telekinesis, she could already control these man-made mutant zombies. It was also at this time that her uncle, Ma Yongshi, told her to take care of the mysterious expert. Uncle didn't say why. But she could guess what her uncle meant. He remembered that more than 10 years ago, when the residents of E District were in chaos, they had once extracted the blood of a mysterious powerhouse. After laboratory research, they found that the genes in the blood had a lot of powerful abilities. Powerful self-healing ability, terrifying strength, and even the ability to regenerate broken limbs. Especially the ability to restrain Virus X. As for beautifying and delaying aging, it was needless to say. At that time, her uncle had said that if they could obtain more blood of the mysterious powerhouse for research, then the genes of the entire base's human population could be upgraded to a higher level. Everyone would be as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse. At that time, it would be easy to restore the human civilization of the past. It was just that they searched openly and secretly, but the mysterious powerhouse never showed up. Until recently, when Lun Yan's incident happened, Lun Yan and his subordinates were torn apart one by one. At that time, everyone below the stage was shocked beyond words. Emosure was the only one who looked calm. His uncle was on the stage and saw it clearly, so he guessed a little. Plus, the gym and other places where the mysterious powerhouse first appeared, most of them were around the corpses. He was finally sure that Emosure was the mysterious powerhouse. Originally, he wanted to discuss with Emosure to see if he could contribute some of his own blood. But after so many years, with his understanding of the mysterious powerhouse would not casually contribute blood. So, he had to come up with this plan. Previously, when Little Doe was shot, she actually wanted to attack Emosure and get some of Emosure's blood. When the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, it was also her uncle Ma Yongshire who asked her to do it. The purpose was also for the blood. As long as it was an enhanced version of the zombie, even if it only made a small cut on Emosure's body, it would be of great help to their research. Later, when the zombie almost bit Happy, it was also arranged by Ma Yongshire. That zombie was actually not an ordinary zombie. It was a zombie that had been enhanced by the X2 virus. But the focus of the enhancement was on its claws. So it could not be seen from the outside. But the people they arranged made a mistake in the zombie room. Originally, they tampered with Emosure's zombie room, but mistakenly tampered with Happy's zombie room. Which led to Happy being bitten. All of this was the cause of the matter. After Emosure finished checking these memories, he only felt a slight headache. Previously, after he plundered those people's memories, he only checked the memories of the past few months. So he did not feel uncomfortable. But this Miss Ponytail was a key figure, so he naturally had to check all of her memories. In a short period of time, he had checked so many memories, in addition to the memories of many others he had checked before. It was inevitable that he would feel dizzy. He took out a bottle of brain cell recovery medicine and drank it. He immediately felt that his headache had eased a lot. Then, he ignored Miss Ponytail, who had become an idiot. He turned around, tapped his feet lightly, and walked towards the corpse farm. Behind him, Miss Ponytail, whose IQ was infinitely close to 0, was still holding her head and wailing. But soon, she would not be in pain anymore. Bang, there was a muffled sound. Her head exploded into a cloud of blood under the moonlight. No matter what reason you have, since you have already caused harm to Happy, then you should be prepared to die. Don't say that it's pardonable, don't say that you have become an idiot to forgive her. Forgiving her is God's business. My mission is to send her to see God. In the distance, the members of the body hunters saw Emosure leave. They thought that he had let Miss Ponytail go. They immediately walked towards Miss Ponytail. However, just as they took a few steps, Miss Ponytail's head suddenly exploded. Everyone was shocked. They did not know what Emosure had seen from Miss Ponytail's memories. They only knew that Captain Ma had already said that there was a reason for all of this. In the end, Emosure did not even bother to listen to a word. He directly exploded Captain Ma's head. The viciousness and mercilessness of the mysterious expert was once again deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. If there was nothing, it was better not to provoke the mysterious expert. Even if there was something, they could not provoke him. Because they would not even have the chance to explain. Chapter 91. After Emosure killed Sister Ponytail, he went straight to the corpse farm. The mastermind was Ma Yongshire. Then, there was only one end for him. Behind him, the members of the hunting group saw Emosure heading towards the corpse field. They all looked at each other in disbelief. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Guo Jutao, the leader. Although Guo Jutao's words and actions were feminine, he really took on the responsibility of a leader since he became the leader. And he did a good job. So, everyone was quite convinced by him. At this time, in this situation, they naturally waited for Guo Jutao to make a decision. Guo Jutao frowned. Logically speaking, in this case, he should chase after him. What if the mysterious strongman killed others? Although he couldn't stop him from killing people, he should at least know the reason. It would be easier to explain to the people in the base. However, the mysterious strongman was full of murderous intent. If he followed him, he might annoy him. As long as he wanted to, it would be too late to escape. Who dared to go up? Wasn't that courting death? But as the leader, even if he was going to die, he had to bite the bullet. At least he should go and ask why Immortal killed people. He used to be the deputy leader of the corpse hunting team in Area A. He knew a little about Immortal. Immortal wouldn't kill people for no reason. Thinking of this, he said to the others, "I'll go first. You follow me from a distance. Without my order, no one should act rashly." But at this time, a person walked out of the crowd. It was Du Xiaodo, the leader of the first team. He said, "Leader, let me go. I probably know the reason." Huh? Guo Jutao turned around and looked at Du Xiaodo in surprise. "Xiaodo, he went to see Xiaodo during the day." At that time, Xiaodo even had difficulty breathing. The doctor said that Xiaodo couldn't get out of bed at all for a month. Why did he suddenly appear in front of him now? Moreover, he looked even healthier than himself. Not only Guo Jutao. The other members also widened their eyes in shock. They looked at Du Xiaodo in disbelief. "Leader Xiaodo, why are you?" Du Xiaodo didn't wait for them to finish and said, "It's the mysterious strongman." Everyone suddenly understood. If it was a mysterious expert, then there was nothing to be surprised about. Ever since the mysterious expert had appeared, he had given people too many surprises. Until now, they were somewhat numb. It seemed that no matter what happened to the mysterious expert, they would not be surprised. Even if you say that the mysterious elite is a mutant, a superhuman, and has been injected with the super soldier serum, you will never be able to believe it. They wouldn't even find it strange if he had the genes of a giant dragon. On the contrary, he felt that it was more logical. However, they would never have guessed that Immortal really had giant dragon genes. Xiaodo continued. "I know a little about this. Someone wants to harm him. I was shot, the mutant zombie escaped from the lab, and the zombie in the graveyard broke free from its chains. All of these were targeted at him. I think he has already found out who the murderer is." When everyone heard this, they were all secretly shocked. Just who was it that had eaten the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard to actually dare to harm the mysterious expert? Little Bean looked in the direction of the corpse farm and said, "He came to find me during the day. I believe that he wouldn't kill someone for no reason. So, I think it's better for me to go with you and ask. The rest of you can stay far away." Commander Guo Jutao pondered for a moment and said in a slightly feminine voice, "That's it then." Then the two of them ran towards the corpse farm together. Dozens of seconds later, they had already arrived at the entrance of the corpse farm. They looked into the courtyard. Under the moonlight, Immortal, dressed in black, looked like the god of death who was about to harvest lives. He stood in the courtyard and stared at a room in the courtyard. After a moment, the door opened. A figure slowly walked out from the crowd. Xiaodo and Guo Jutao both recognized the figure. The former chief of the base, Ma Yangshi. However, the old chief at this time seemed to have aged 10 years. His figure was also a little hunched. He no longer had the demeanor of a chief. He slowly walked into the courtyard and faced Immortal, who was like the god of death. After a moment, he sighed and shook his head. "You know everything." Immortal was speechless. Only the murderous intent in his eyes could be seen. Ma Yangshi nodded. "Yes, all of this was instigated by me. I resigned and came to the corpse farm because of you. The one who shot Xiaodo was actually aimed at you. Xiaodo was just too unlucky and ran into the gun. The mutated zombie in the lab escaped because of you. The zombie in the corpse farm broke free from the chains because of you. But there was a small mistake and they got into the wrong room. That was why I almost became a zombie. I am deeply sorry for this." When the two people outside the door heard this, they were extremely shocked. What was Chief Ma saying? He was the one who instigated all of this. How was this possible? Chief Ma's words completely overturned their worldview. Chief Ma had always been a positive person in their hearts. He could even be said to be a great person. Without Chief Ma, there would be no Base C1. Without Chief Ma, everyone in Base C1 would have either died or become zombies. But at this moment, such a person personally said that he was the one who instigated all of this. The psychological impact of this was too great. While he was shocked, Guo Jutao thought of something. He waved at his subordinates in the distance. He knew that this matter was of great importance. He had to let everyone know. And not only did he have to let them know, he had to let them hear it with their own ears. Otherwise, even if he told them, they would not believe him. Soon, those people rushed over. Guo Jutao thought of something again and immediately reached into his shirt pocket. At the same time, Old Li and Happy were also awakened by the commotion. The two of them heard someone talking in the yard. Out of curiosity, they gently opened the window a little. Under the moonlight, in the yard, Mo Shi was still speechless. He was waiting for Ma Yangshi to continue. Although the moment Ma Yangshi targeted him, the outcome was already decided. But for a person like Ma Yangshi who had worked hard and contributed a lot, such a big boss behind the scenes, he was willing to give him a chance to leave behind his last words. Ma Yangshi did not seem to see the people outside the corpse farm at all. He continued, but all of these are necessary sacrifices. It is impossible to restore human civilization without sacrifices. So, I don't regret it. Then, he turned his head and looked at one of his row of corpses. There was a hint of gentleness in his eyes. He continued. That year, you were injured when you saved those people in the residential area of Block E. We extracted a few drops of your blood. After studying it, we found that your blood is very powerful. I plan to ask for a few more drops of your blood. As long as we studied your blood thoroughly, we believed that we could create more psychokinesis and hunters as powerful as you. But no matter how we searched, you refused to show up. We had no choice but to do this. Chapter 92. Under the moonlight, Ma Yangshi's figure was no longer tall. He looked a bit thin. He sighed and said, unfortunately, if you showed up earlier, we could have a good talk. Maybe you wouldn't be so hostile towards me. Then, the entire human civilization might be able to reappear soon. At this moment, Mo Shi finally opened his mouth. One drop of blood is not enough, you want a few more. If a few drops of blood is not enough, do you want all of my flesh and blood? Ma Yangshi did not deny. He said, if all of your flesh and blood can be exchanged for the restoration of the entire human civilization, then I won't rule out doing so. Mo Shi said coldly, you sound so noble, don't you have any selfishness? The zombie you secretly raised for more than 20 years, is it your wife? Maybe her body also has my blood. Ma Yangshi smiled bitterly and nodded, of course, there aren't many people in this world who don't have selfishness. I'm also just a mortal. Hearing this, everyone felt like they were struck by lightning. Raising a zombie for more than 20 years. This news made everyone feel like their whole world was about to be turned upside down. After the base was established, Chief Ma once drafted the Basic Law. The Basic Law is the code of conduct for everyone in the base. One of the rules is, it is strictly forbidden to raise zombies privately, violators will be killed without mercy. Although strict, zombies are extremely dangerous. If they are raised privately, if they get infected, the entire base will be finished. So for this rule, the people who have suffered from zombies are all in favor. But who would have thought that Chief Ma was actually raising zombies privately? And he raised them for more than 20 years. Who would have thought that the person who made the law would be the first to break the law? Ma Yangshi smiled bitterly and said calmly, Xiao Min is my wife, unfortunately she was infected after the virus broke out. But although she became a zombie, I couldn't bear to leave her. So I kept her. Your blood has a strong restraining effect on the X virus. This gave me hope. Although zombies look like walking corpses, after our research, we found that the zombie's body is not dead, it's just that their cells are suppressed by the virus, so it's like they are dead. I fused your blood with Little Min's and found that Little Min's blood has regained its activity. That's why I want to borrow your blood. This is also an important reason. Emosure said coldly. Are you sure you can recover your memories if your body recovers? Ma Yangshi shook his head. I don't know, but we have to try. Emoshure's voice was cold. So, you want me to sacrifice myself to save all of mankind and save your wife? Ma Yangshi said, if it were me, I would do the same. Emoshure's eyes were cold as he spat out 4 words. I'm not you. Ma Yangshi nodded and smiled bitterly. I know. Therefore, they could only resort to this method. Unfortunately, he failed in the end. Sighing, he slowly said, I only have one last request. Emosure was speechless. Ma Yangshi said. I know that there's only one outcome for what I've done to you. But, can I choose how I die? Emosure didn't say anything. Ma Yangshi nodded slowly at Emosure. Thank you. Then, he turned around and slowly walked to the zombie room where his wife was locked up. As he walked, he sighed. Xiao Wei is a good child, but unfortunately, I've let you down. As he spoke, tears flashed in his eyes. When he arrived at the door of the zombie room, he took out the key that he kept close to him like a treasure and opened the door. At this moment, he seemed to have become much more relaxed. It was as if he had put down the heavy burden that he had carried for decades. In the room, his wife, the female zombie, saw the human appear. She immediately roared, bared her teeth, and waved her claws, wanting to pounce over. The iron chains rattled as they were pulled. Ma Yangshi put a collar around his neck and fastened the iron chain to the collar. Everyone finally knew what he was going to do. A few members of the hunting group had already walked into the courtyard and called out, Chief, Chief, don't, mysterious powerhouse, can you let the chief go? Old Li and Happy's door had also been opened. The 2 of them came to the courtyard. Chief, Old Li's eyes flashed. Happy held Emoshure's hand tightly. However, Emoshure was unmoved. Ma Yangshi turned around and said to Guojutao, Xiao Guo, send us to the laboratory tomorrow. The laboratory hasn't received a new zombie that has just been transformed for a long time. I should be able to help. Chief, Guojutao's voice was already choked with sobs. But Ma Yangshi ignored him. He turned his head and looked at the female zombie. His gaze became gentle. He said softly, Xiao Min, it's been more than 20 years. We can finally be together. As he said that, he took a step forward with a smile on his face. Roar, the female zombie immediately grabbed his hand and pulled him over. She opened her mouth and bit his neck. Blood immediately gushed out. When the female zombie saw the blood, she became even more violent. She kept shaking her head left and right, biting Ma Yangshi like a wild dog biting its prey. Ma Yangshi did not resist. He just endured the pain and fixed the other end of his chain into the iron buckle on the wall. Then, he hugged the female zombie tightly. No matter how hard the female zombie tried to bite his neck, he didn't care. Blood splattered. It was unbearable to watch. Everyone was silent. After a while, Ma Yangshi's eyes gradually turned gray. There was a final smile on his face. He turned his head and looked at everyone. Goodbye. In the next moment, he suddenly pounced on everyone. A beast-like roar came from his throat. Roar, roar, the 2 zombies, 1 male and 1 female, kept pouncing on everyone as if they had gone mad. The chains behind them rattled as they were pulled. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. They could not come back to their senses for a long time. Only then did the murderous aura on Emosure slowly fade away. Looking at the 2 zombies in the zombie recovery room, he subconsciously held Happy's cold hand tightly. The moon hung high in the sky. It reflected this gloomy world. The next day, the hunting group asked for Emoshure's opinion. They announced everything that happened last night. When everyone heard the news, besides being shocked, they also found it hard to believe. They did not believe that Chief Ma was such a person. However, the leader of the hunting group, Guojutao, took out a recording pen. Last night, he knew that people would not believe it, so he had already recorded the conversation between Chief Ma and Mo Shi. Once the recording was released, people were still in shock, but they had to believe it. In the end, they followed Chief Ma's last words and sent him and his wife to the laboratory. Mo Shi felt a little complicated. Such a person had always wanted to harm him, so he naturally deserved to die. However, this was not the ending he wanted to see. Was what he had done right or wrong? However, he only hesitated for a long time. After half a day, he thought it through. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. What nobility! What selfless sacrifice! All of that was courting death. This matter was over. Next, Mo Shi planned to go to base C2. It was only about 100 kilometers away from the dragon ruins. He wanted to see if he could sign in there. Since the system was able to give him such a map, the items he signed in the draconic ruins must be extraordinary. Chapter 93. Now, Mo Shi's identity had been made public in base C1. Old Li was naturally very surprised and couldn't come back to his senses for an entire day. Happy was very happy. Although she had long guessed that Mo Shi was a mysterious elite, she felt as if a stone had been lifted from her heart when she received confirmation this time. Moreover, brother Mo was so powerful. How could she not be happy? As for the others, no one dared to approach Mo Shi. He had killed so many people in one night, including Regiment Commander Ma and Chief Ma. Who would dare to approach him? As for talking about him, they didn't even dare to. In the eyes of the people, talking about such a mysterious elite was equivalent to courting death. Although some people were secretly unhappy that Mo Shi had killed Regiment Commander Ma and forced Chief Ma to his death. But that was only in the dark. In the face of such a mysterious elite, they didn't dare to say a word. Occasionally, people would see Mo Shi on the road, but they would either stay far away from him or stand by the side. Otherwise, they would stand by the roadside and wait for Mo Shi to pass by before quickly leaving. Mo Shi didn't care about any of this. No one came to disturb him, and he was happy with the peace and quiet. Of course, most people were still grateful to Mo Shi. Mo Shi was cruel and merciless, but he had saved the base so many times. If it wasn't for Mo Shi, they would have become zombies long ago. Among them, the one who was most grateful to Mo Shi was Yang Kong. Now, Yang Kong couldn't do strenuous exercise. He had become an ordinary person. However, the gratitude in his heart towards Mo Shi had never changed. When he found out that the mysterious elite was Mo Shi, he took 2 bottles of Shifeng wine that he had kept for more than 20 years and went to the zombie farm. Although he was just an ordinary person, he wasn't as afraid as the others when facing Mo Shi. Mo Shi, Old Li, and Yang Kong finished the 2 bottles of wine. Old Li and Yang Kong were already drunk and hazy. Happy was worried that Mo Shi would feel uncomfortable when he was drunk. But when she saw that Mo Shi didn't seem drunk at all, she was relieved. Since Mo Shi had found out all the facts, the 2 people from base C2 were no longer a suspect. However, guild leader Guojutao did not let them leave immediately. This was because the mysterious expert, Mo Shi, had instructed them not to let them leave. In a few days, he would go to base C2 with them. That night, after midnight, Mo Shi spoke in his mind. System, sign in. The system's voice quickly sounded. Sign in successful. Sign in event, killed mutated psychokinesis Ma Wei, investigate the truth, sign in reward, blood demon's eyes upgrade, psychic blessing, leader's will, dragon breath pearl. Mo Shi was a little excited when he saw that there were so many rewards. 2 events and 4 rewards. This was the first time. He carefully examined the rewards. The first 3 were all skills. After the upgrade, the blood demon's eye could directly identify the level of any creature. Telekinesis blessing was the same as Sister Ponytail's skill. It could be used to activate other people's telekinesis. The leaders could control these people whose telekinesis was activated. In other words, the system rewarded all the abilities that Sister Ponytail obtained after her telekinesis mutated to Emoture. In the end, Emoture focused his attention on the Dragon Breath Pearl. It was a translucent pearl the size of a walnut. He could see the fiery red flames inside the pearl. And if he looked closer, he would find that this flame was in the shape of a dragon. A line of words appeared on the pearl. Frowny face. Dragon Breath Pearl automatically activates when life is in danger. Creates the shadow of a flaming dragon and spits out flaming dragon breath. Can instantly kill any enemy below level 10 hunter. Note, can be used repeatedly. When Emoture saw this, he couldn't help but smile. He planned to leave the base, but he was worried about Happy. With this Dragon Breath Pearl, even level 10 hunters, strong mutated zombies, and mutated beasts wouldn't be able to harm Happy. However, Emoture was still worried about this. That afternoon, he brought over a Titan Dragon gene enhancer and injected it into Happy. He hoped that she could become a corpse hunter. After all, the Dragon Breath Pearl was dead, but humans were alive. If she had some ability to protect herself, it would be much better than the Dragon Breath Pearl. However, to Emoture's surprise, after Happy was injected, there was no change. He then tried another brain cell enhancer, but there was still no change. He could clearly sense with his telekinesis that after the medicine entered Happy's body and circulated once, it had no effect and was expelled through her sweat pores. Emoture found it strange. In his opinion, the gene enhancer produced by the system was very effective. It should be useful to anyone. But he didn't expect that even the gene enhancer produced by the system couldn't stimulate Happy's potential. After that, he tried to bless Happy with his telekinesis. Happy still didn't react. Emoture was speechless. Could it be that Happy was the legendary trash? Such a beautiful girl shouldn't be like that. Since he couldn't figure it out, Emoture didn't think too much about it. Over the next 2 days, he signed in and received 20 recovery potions. He gave these recovery potions to Happy and told her to drink a bottle if she was injured. Happy was a little puzzled. She stared at Emoture with a pair of expressive eyes. Emoture explained, "Happy, I have to go to base C2 for some time." Happy was stunned. She couldn't bear for Brother Mo to leave. However, she was very sensible. She knew that Brother Mo must have something important to do there. She didn't ask much. She just looked at Emoture with concern, as if saying, "Brother Mo, you must take good care of yourself when you go there alone." Emoture chuckled and rubbed Happy's head. He said, "Don't worry." Then, he took out the Dragon Breath Pearl and handed it to Happy. He told her what it was for and asked her to keep it with her. Happy's eyes flickered. She was reluctant to part with him, but she was also happy. Before Brother Mo left, he had done so many things for her. It meant that he had her in his heart. However, while she was happy, she couldn't help but be worried. Brother Mo was so powerful, but she was just an ordinary person. She was even a mute girl who couldn't even be considered an ordinary person. She wasn't worthy of Brother Mo at all. "Alright, it's getting late. Rest early." As Emoture spoke, he got up and was about to leave. However, at this moment, Happy suddenly came over. Her lips touched Emoture's face lightly. Then, she seemed to be a little scared herself. She retreated in a panic. Her heart was pounding like a crazy deer. The blush on her face had already spread to her neck. His heart was filled with apprehension and fear. She didn't mean to do that just now. It was just that when she looked at Brother Mo's face, that impulse suddenly rose in her heart. She couldn't help but move closer. Oh no, will Brother Mo be angry? She wanted to apologize to Brother Mo, but she couldn't muster up the courage. Just as she was feeling nervous, she felt a gentle hand reach out to the top of her head. He gently rubbed it twice. At the same time, Brother Mo's voice sounded. "Happy, you've learned bad things." Chapter 94. Mo sure was a little surprised that he was kissed by force, but he understood. Sometimes, people would have the urge to kiss the person they liked. This was a biological instinct. It was a very natural thing. Although Happy was a more reserved girl, when she knew that she was about to leave, she could not help but have this impulse because she was reluctant to part with him. Mo sure touched the part of his face that seemed to still have a trace of warmth, and a happy smile appeared on his face. On the third day, the man and woman from Base C2 were released. The leader of the hunting group, Guojutao, smiled apologetically to the two of them. The matter has been investigated. The two of you are innocent. I'm sorry for making you suffer. The woman in leather, Zhen Shishir, was indignant. But at this time, she did not dare to say anything. Now, she already understood that psychokinesis was not omnipotent. Level 4 psychokinesis was not enough to run rampant. If something went wrong and she was hit with another strong anesthetic bomb, she would have to suffer again. Hao Ren, on the other hand, had a smile on his face. He waved his hand and said, "It's okay, it's okay. I can understand. You're investigating a case. This is what you should do." Guojutao followed Mo Shure's instructions and said to the two of them, "You said that Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse-raising room. Then our base will send 2 technical talents to you. One is a laboratory researcher, and the other is a corpse-raising person in the corpse-raising field." Then, he called the researcher and Mo Shure over. The man and woman had been locked up for a few days, so they did not know that Mo Shure was the mysterious powerhouse. Mo Shure did not intend to reveal his true identity on this trip to Base C2. He still enjoyed the feeling of hiding behind the scenes and quietly becoming stronger. Moreover, it was hard to know what was in a person's heart. Who knew if other people had good intentions? He was already so strong, but Ma Yongshire still dared to harm him. The two of them were naturally very surprised that Base C2 could send them technical talents. The indignation in their hearts lessened a lot. Mo Shure and the others were about to leave Base C1. Not many people came to send them off. Guojutao looked into Mo Shure's eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll help you take care of Happy and Oldly." Mo Shure nodded. "Thank you very much." Happy stared at Mo Shure while he stood by the side. There were faint tears in his eyes. Mo Shure went to Happy's side and comforted him. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." Happy nodded. She was very sensible and would not force Brother Mo to stay. She looked at Mo Shure with her watery eyes. It was as if they were saying, "Brother Mo, come back early." Mo Shure patted Happy's head and messed up her hair. He said, "Let's go back." Then, he turned around and boarded the helicopter. The helicopter's rotors began to spin as it slowly rose into the air. A cloud of dust rose from the ground. Watching Mo Shure leave, Guojutao began to feel pressured in his heart. The mysterious expert left. In that case, the safety of the base would be in the hands of the hunter group. In the past, he did not feel much pressure to maintain the safety of the base. But now that the mysterious expert had left, he suddenly felt that the burden on his shoulders had become much heavier. If there was another crisis like before, he was afraid that, after the helicopter rose into the air, Haoren said to Mo Shure with a grin, "Hey, brother, what's your relationship with that girl just now?" Before Mo Shure could say anything, Zhen Shishir glared at him. "Haoren, what do you want?" Haoren subconsciously shrank back. He chuckled. "Nothing, I just think that girl is really beautiful." Seeing Zhen Shishir's face turn cold, he quickly said, "Of course, she's not as beautiful as you." Then, he secretly winked at Mo Shure. Then, he said to Mo Shure, "Brother, she's your friend, right? I could tell when we went to the corpse farm that day." "You're really lucky." Mo Shure glanced at Haoren and replied faintly, "Yes." Seeing that Mo Shure seemed to be hostile to him, Haoren could not help but wave his hand and laugh. "Brother, don't worry. Although I, Haoren, am not a good person, I'm lustful but not obscene. And I also know that I can't bully my friend's wife." You can keep your heart in your stomach. Zhen Shishir seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. She said angrily, if you don't shut your dog mouth, I'll sew it up. Hao Ren quickly shrank back and said, it's just a chat. It's just a chat. There's no need, no need. Then, he turned his head and calmly flew the helicopter. Zhen Shishir, who was wearing a leather coat, snorted coldly. She leaned back in her chair. She ignored the others. Mo Shi was too lazy to say anything. As for the researcher sent by the laboratory, he did not say anything when he saw that the others were silent. The helicopter faced the sun and flew in the northeast direction. Base C2 was in the former Liaodong and mountain. It was more than 1,200 kilometers away from Base C1. The fuel Hao Ren and the others brought when they came to Base C1 should be enough to last until they reached Base C2. Mo Shi leaned against the cabin door and looked outside. He saw that as far as his eyes could see, it was all green. Abandoned cities and lonely villages were all occupied by green plants. Mo Shi looked at all of this, his thoughts fluctuating. More than 20 minutes later, a cry suddenly pulled Mo Shi's thoughts back. Oh no, there's a flying mutant beast. The next moment. Bang, with a loud noise, the helicopter suddenly shook violently. Outside the helicopter, there was a huge human-headed bee with a length of 10 meters. This human-headed bee had 2 pairs of blood-red wings. The widest part of its wings was 15 meters. Its 6 legs were covered with barbs. At the tip of each leg, there was a sharp, hook-shaped spike. Under the sun, it shone with a cold light. The strangest thing was that its head was a huge human head with a diameter of half a meter. This human head had no skin, and it was badly mutilated. A pair of deep eye sockets. A javelin-like mouthpart poked out of the human head's mouth. The whole thing looked disgusting and terrifying. Mo Shi used to think that the human-headed bees were named because their hives were shaped like human heads. But now that he saw this huge mutant human-headed bee, he finally understood. This was the real human-headed bee. He took advantage of the fact that no one noticed. His pupils suddenly turned blood-red. The blood demon's eye opened. In the next moment, he checked the level of this mutant human-headed bee. Species, mutant human-headed bee, level 3 strong mutant beast. After the upgrade of the blood demon's eye, he could see the strength level of any creature. This was much more convenient. Since it was a level 3 mutant beast, these 2 people would not have a problem dealing with it. Mo Shi naturally did not have to do anything. Hao Ren said to Zhen Shishir next to him. Zhen Zi, you open it. Then he turned around and said to Mo Shi and the researcher. Brothers, I'll show you my skills. As he said that, he directly opened the cabin door next to him. He jumped out. He hung on the landing gear of the helicopter with one hand. His right hand waved to the human-headed bee and smiled. The beauty opposite, look over here. Chapter 95. 95 A crossbow arrow. Hao Ren hung on the helicopter landing gear with one hand. He was teasing the giant bee. The human-headed hornet seemed to be angered as well. It flapped its wings, and its 2-meter-long mouthpiece stabbed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren gently moved his body to the side, avoiding the stab. At the same time, he raised his right leg high above his head, forming a horse shape. He suddenly chopped down. Crack, the bee's mouthpiece suddenly broke. The head bee let out a miserable shriek. The poisonous needle on its tail, which was more than a meter long, was aimed straight at Hao Ren. Hao Ren smiled and said, beautiful women like to be F***ked. As you wish. With that, he moved his body to the side, avoiding the attack. At the same time, he chopped down with his foot. Crack, the 1-meter-long poisonous needle suddenly broke in the middle. Black venom suddenly spurted out. Hao Ren moved his body to the side, avoiding the spurted venom. Then he kicked the bee's abdomen. Bang, there was a muffled sound. The bee's huge abdomen suddenly burst open. The two pairs of wings drooped down weakly, and the whole huge body fell down. Howren didn't seem to be satisfied. He shook his head and said, "I didn't use my strength, and you fell down. This won't do. Do you have any sisters? Call them out." However, before he finished speaking, on the mountain top not far away, between the woods, a black mass of things flew out. There were probably hundreds of them. Looking carefully, they were all mutated bees. Each of them was about the same size as this one. Each of them had a huge human head. Howren's expression changed, and he shouted, "So many! Too many beautiful women can't take it." He quickly jumped into the cabin. Zhen Shishir said angrily, "Crow's beak." Howren smiled, "Zhen Zi, it's up to you." Zhen Shishir rolled her eyes at Howren. He unzipped his leather jacket. There were 60 flying daggers in the leather jacket. Using his telekinesis, the flying dagger flew out and circled around the fuselage. However, the human-headed hornet seemed to know how powerful they were. It didn't fly too close. Instead, it extended its tail more than 100 meters away. Whoosh! Whoosh! They actually shot out the poisonous needles from their tails. Zhen Shishir's expression changed slightly when she saw this. He hurriedly controlled the 60 flying daggers to spin around him. He blocked the poisonous needles. However, the venomous stings on the head hornets were not something that could be used once. After shooting out one needle, a new one would quickly grow out from their tails. Over 100 mutated human-headed wasps shot out over 100 poisonous stingers every time. Even Zhen Shishir, who had level 4 psychokinesis, found it difficult to resist. Seeing this, Emosher sent out his telekinesis, intending to think of a way to kill these human-headed bees. However, at this moment, an urgent alarm suddenly sounded in the cabin. D. Howren looked down at the dashboard and cursed. "Damn it, the fuel tank was hit. We have to land and repair it as soon as possible." Emosher glanced at the ground. This was a mountainous area, so they couldn't land. More than 10 kilometers away, there was a large piece of flat land. "Let's go there." Emosher pointed at the large piece of flat land. Howren immediately controlled the helicopter and flew towards that piece of flat land. Soon, the helicopter landed on that piece of flat land. Zhen Shishir quickly sent out her telekinesis to check if there were any other dangers around. Emosher took advantage of the fact that her telekinesis wasn't focused on the human-headed bees. He immediately spread out his telekinesis. It was just a sweep. Bang 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 bang, almost all of the mutated human-headed bees' heads made a muffled sound. However, when Emosher triggered their brainwaves, he controlled the frequency to not be too high. So from the outside, their heads were still intact. In fact, they had exploded into a paste inside. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees immediately fell from the sky. At the same time, Emosher's mind was filled with notifications of evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed a level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Hundreds of mutated human-headed bees allowed Emosher to gain 300,000 evolution points in an instant. After a year of consumption, he had less than 6 million evolution points left. This time, he should be able to replenish a lot on the way to C2 base. At this moment, the helicopter landed on a large piece of cement. Although there were weeds that were as tall as a person growing on the cement, there were also a few trees that occasionally grew. However, compared to other places, there were a lot less weeds and trees. The helicopter had just landed and Howren was busy repairing the fuel tank. Zhen Shishir scanned the surroundings with her telekinesis and didn't find any danger. She immediately turned around and looked at the human-headed bees that were chasing them. But when she looked, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Howren heard her doubtful voice and also looked at the sky behind the helicopter. He saw that there was nothing there. There was no human-headed bees. The few of them were all at a loss. Zhen Shishir carefully scanned the surroundings twice, but she still didn't find the human-headed bees. She frowned and shook her head. She said to Hao Ren, quickly fix it and leave. Hao Ren nodded, don't worry. Other than one thing that I'm not happy about, everything else, but just as he said this, his voice suddenly stopped. Everyone realized that something was wrong and walked to Hao Ren's side. They followed Hao Ren's gaze. They saw that there were more than 10 poison needles stuck in the helicopter. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the needle stuck in the fuel tank was clearly different from the other needles. The other needles were black. But this needle was copper yellow and there was even some rust on it. Hao Ren scratched his head and carefully examined the needle. He discovered that the needle was actually bronze. Hao Ren couldn't help but ask, are the human-headed bees now able to produce bronze in their bodies? After Zhen Shishir carefully examined it with her telekinesis, she frowned and said, it's a crossbow arrow. The others heard this and were stunned. The most essential difference between zombies, mutant beasts, and humans was that humans could use tools and weapons. Mutant beasts naturally couldn't use tools and weapons. Even the strongest mutant zombies had never seen them use weapons. After all, for them, no matter how powerful the weapon was, it was not as good as their claws and teeth. So now that a bronze crossbow arrow suddenly appeared here, it could only mean one thing. There were other people here. And this person obviously didn't come with good intentions. Zhen Shishir quickly spread out her telekinesis again to explore the surroundings. But the range of her telekinesis could only reach a radius of 400 meters. Within the range of her detection, she didn't see any other people at all. There were 2 mutant beasts, but it was obvious that they couldn't pose any threat to them. She could only shake her head to the others and said, I'll be on guard. Hao Ren, you fix it quickly. Hao Ren nodded, don't worry, Zhen Zi. Chapter 96. Hao Ren took out all kinds of tools and began to get busy. It seemed that he was very familiar with it. Generally speaking, people who became hunters focused on training and working hard to improve their strength. It was impossible to waste time on things like fixing things. It was really surprising that Hao Ren could fix things so skillfully. However, Mo Shi's attention was not here at the moment. His telekinesis covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Just as he released his telekinesis, he discovered that a figure had appeared more than 900 meters away. That person held a bronze crossbow in his hand and was running southeast. When Mo Shi planned to investigate carefully, that person had already run out of Mo Shi's detection range. Mo Shi frowned slightly. He did not chase after him. First, it would expose his strength. Second, what if there was danger? Third, it was not necessary. With his cautious personality, he would not casually take risks when there were no huge benefits. However, why did he feel that the way that person ran was strange? It seemed a little stiff. But compared to the stiffness of zombies, it was much better. And the clothes that the figure was wearing did not look like ordinary clothes. As for what was wrong, Mo Shi just used his telekinesis to roughly scan and could not tell. He just muttered in his heart, could it be that this was a zombie with a higher degree of mutation? Then, he retracted his telekinesis and carefully scanned the bronze crossbow twice. He tried to find some clues from this bronze crossbow. As a result, he found that although there were a few fingerprints left on the bronze crossbow, but those fingerprints were very strange. Every fingerprint seemed to be there and then not. Mo Shi's eyebrows slightly creased again. But it did not matter. He still had a trick that could greatly increase the detection range. With a thought, he took out the virtual sentry tower from his backpack. The virtual sentry tower was activated and covered a radius of 5 kilometers. And Mo Shi's telekinesis, with the help of the virtual sentry tower, instantly covered a radius of 5 kilometers. He had a panoramic view of everything within a 5-kilometer radius. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he found that his telekinesis and the virtual sentry tower could interact. As long as the virtual sentry tower was activated, his telekinesis would be able to use the sentry tower to explore a radius of 5 kilometers. At this time, his telekinesis swept across a radius of 5 kilometers and quickly found the figure. The man was holding a bronze crossbow. A quiver of arrows hung from his waist. He was 1.8 meters tall. The strange thing was that he was wearing an ancient costume. It wasn't an ordinary ancient costume. Rather, it was similar to the Terracotta Army's battle armor and battle robes. Her hair was also tied into a crooked bun. Why was this person dressed exactly the same as the Terracotta Warriors? Cosplay? Then, he carefully investigated. The man's face was painted green. It was a pale green color. Moreover, this pale green face was broken. From his left temple all the way to his nose, there was a piece missing. But it didn't look like a zombie's broken body. The zombies were badly mutilated and badly mutilated. As for this green-faced guy, the damage on his face was like a broken vase that had a piece of it knocked off. Or rather, it was like an eggshell that was missing a piece. But the strange thing was that through the hole on his head, he could clearly see the flesh inside. He could even see that the brain inside was still beating. Seeing this scene, even the experienced and knowledgeable Immortal couldn't help but gasp in his heart. What the hell was this? It was called a terracotta army, but there was flesh and blood inside. It was called a zombie, but why did its shell look like it was made of clay? At this time, this green-faced terracotta army zombie was running towards the northeast at a speed of nearly 200 meters per second. A moment later, they passed through a half-collapsed door that was covered in green plants. This gate was in an antique style. Immortal carefully examined it and vaguely recognized a few large words on the gate. Chin. Army. Museum. Immortal understood that this was once the Terracotta Army Museum. Not far in front of this gate, there was a huge roof. The size of this huge roof was more than 50 basketball courts. On the roof, hundreds of mutant bats were hanging upside down. Each of them was more than 5 meters long. They were much longer than the mutant bats he had seen before. Below these bats, there were 3 huge pits. In these 3 pits, there were 8,000 Terracotta Army soldiers. The whole thing looked extremely magnificent and extraordinary. More than 8,000 soldiers and horses had been quietly standing for more than 2,000 years. Even when the world was swept by the virus, they still miraculously stood tall. Immortal carefully examined these Terracotta Army soldiers. There was no second monster like the green-faced Terracotta Army soldier. In his previous life, he had been to the Terracotta Army Museum. According to the guide, when the other Terracotta Army soldiers were unearthed from the 3 pits, they were either flesh-colored or pinkish-white. Only the kneeling Terracotta Army soldier, other than his hair, beard, and black pupils, his face was completely green. There were many guesses about this. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was a prank by the craftsman. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was similar to a shaman. Some said that the green-faced Terracotta Army was used to scare the enemy. Immortal guessed that this Terracotta Army soldier might have been cuckolded by his neighbor. But now, it seemed that it was all nonsense. The reason why he painted his face green was most likely related to his current appearance. At the same time, Immortal remembered an article he had read before. It said that one night, an old man guarding the entrance of a museum was killed. No matter what, the murderer could not be found. In the end, blood was found on the hands of a green-faced Terracotta Army soldier. After comparing it with the old man's DNA, it was found to be the old man's blood. Some people said that this green-faced Terracotta Army soldier was resurrected and killed the old man. Of course, Immortal thought that it was all nonsense. At this time, he spread out his telekinesis, trying to find the green-faced monster. But after scanning the place 3 times, he could not find any trace of it. Immortal shook his head and stopped paying attention to it. Whether it was a green-faced monster or a green-faced fatty, he did not care. He thought that if he went to the museum and signed in, he should be able to get a special reward. He looked at the others and saw that they were not paying attention. His pupils immediately turned blood red, and he looked in the direction of the museum. There was indeed corpse energy there. But there was very little corpse energy, only a wisp. Obviously, this was the corpse energy of the green-faced monster just now. Since there was corpse energy, that guy must be a zombie. Emosure thought for a while, turned to the other three and said, "I want to pee." Howren laughed and said, "Brother, you really have a good taste in this kind of place." Emosure was speechless. Pee. Howren grinned and said, "Let's do it here." Emosure glanced at Zhenshishir and said, "There's a woman here, I can't pee." Zhenshishir snorted, "TSK, as if you haven't seen anyone before." Howren laughed, "Be careful, your little bug will be eaten by mutated beasts." Emosure didn't pay any attention to him. He stepped on the tall grass and entered a small forest more than 10 meters away. The next moment, his footsteps were light. With a few steps, he was more than 500 meters away. When those people were completely out of sight, he used the dragon's shadow step. With one step, he ran 1,000 meters in the direction of the museum. Only a 10-meter-tall dragon's shadow was left behind. But even if it was just a shadow, it was still domineering. Fortunately, in the forest, and far away from those people, he was not seen by them. Chapter 97. Emosure covered 1,000 meters in one step. With every step, he would leave behind a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon phantom. Then, it slowly disappeared. In just 4.5 steps, he arrived at the half-collapsed entrance of the museum. He scanned the surroundings with his psychic power again. He still didn't find the green-faced monster. He shook his head and decided to ignore it for now. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." As soon as he finished speaking, the system replied, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, Qin Shi Huang's Terracotta Army Museum, sign in reward, Qin crossbow." Emosure frowned and sighed. He was obviously not satisfied with this Qin crossbow. He already had the sky-killing dragon spear as a long-range attack weapon, so this Qin crossbow seemed quite useless. It couldn't be more powerful than the sky-killing dragon spear, right? He checked the Qin crossbow in his backpack with his mind. Qin Nu's appearance was also very ordinary. A wooden bow and a bronze crossbow. It came with a wooden crossbow arrow. Compared to the demon-devouring dragon spear, even the sky-killing dragon spear, forget it, let's not compare. Emosure smiled bitterly. He focused his mind on the Qin crossbow. An item introduction immediately appeared on it. It was very simple. There were only 7 words: frowny face Qin crossbow, pierce through everything on earth. When Emosure saw this, his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed. Pierce through everything on earth, what kind of concept was this? In other words, nothing on earth could withstand a blow from it. Emosure suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked, "System, you only gave me 1 crossbow arrow? It's useless after 1 shot." The system replied, "Frowny face, you can specify the sign-in reward, received crossbow arrow." Emosure nodded. "That's more like it." At this moment, the system's voice sounded again, "This is a special place. You can sign in twice a day." A smile appeared on Emosure's face. This was good. He said again, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, mutated bat lair, sign in reward, mutated bat king gene enhancer 1, Emosure's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Thinking of this, he was looking forward to it. He took out the mutated bat king gene enhancer. It was a blood-red liquid. It was as red as fresh blood. He rolled up his sleeves and injected the mutated bat king gene enhancer into his left arm. Then, he used his telekinesis to carefully observe the flow of the medicine. After the medicinal energy entered his body, it flowed along his blood vessels to his heart. Then, it was pumped out by the heart and flowed through all the blood vessels to the rest of the body. In the end, the medicinal power fused with almost all the cells in his body. A new type of gene appeared in his body. At some point, he felt a burning sensation on his back and between his ribs. This burning sensation was mainly concentrated on his two shoulder blades. Mo sure had a bad premonition. He lamented in his heart, "My clothes." In the next moment, "Ryip," a clear and crisp sound came from behind. His back immediately felt much cooler. At the same time, a pair of blood-red wings with a wingspan of 5 meters appeared. This pair of blood-red wings was similar to a bat's in both shape and appearance. At the tip of the wings, there were sharp claws. These claws were not like the claws of ordinary bats. Instead, they were like crescent-shaped sickles. Cold light flickered on them, and the atmosphere was oppressive. Mo sure's mind moved. The pair of wings circled around his body and reached his chest. Looking at this pair of blood-red wings, he was quite satisfied. He tried to flap the wings. His whole body immediately flew up shakily. Although it was a pair of wings that he had just obtained. These wings were like his arms, and he didn't feel any awkwardness when using them. However, this was his first time practicing flying. He couldn't quite grasp the strength and the amplitude of the wings' movement. Swaying, swaying, swaying. He flew around the museum. He gradually got used to it. His speed wasn't slow either, reaching 300 meters per second. Although it was much slower than the dragon's shadow step, it was much faster than other hunters. One had to know that other hunters, even if they reached level 10, only had a speed of 200 meters per second. Moreover, if it was inconvenient to use the dragon's shadow step on special terrain, this pair of wings was the best choice. After a test flight, Mo sure landed. He retracted the wings back into his body. On his back, the skin that had been torn apart before quickly closed again. It was as smooth as new, as if it had never grown wings before. At this moment, a gust of wind blew past. Mo sure only felt a chill on his back. He sighed. This pair of wings was awesome, but it was a waste of clothes. Then, he took out a piece of old clothes from his backpack and put it on. He turned around and glanced at the museum. Mo sure hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he didn't go in to investigate. He always felt that this museum was too strange. He clearly detected that the green-faced monster went in. However, after entering the figurine pit, the green-faced monster disappeared. In the apocalypse, survival was the way to go. As for the others, they were all secondary. Thinking of this, he just used his telekinesis to scan slightly. In the next moment, the hundreds of mutated bats hanging upside down on the roof of the museum were suddenly torn apart. For a moment, the entire museum was like a heavy rain of blood and broken limbs. The 3 figurine pits were all dyed red with blood. All of the 8,000 terracotta soldiers were dyed red with blood. In Mo sure's mind, the system once again refreshed. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. Killed level 3 strong mutated beast, gained 3,000 evolution points. After a moment of counting, this wave of killing a total of 300 mutated bats, gained more than 1 million evolution points. Seeing this, Mo sure nodded with satisfaction. He didn't stay any longer. His feet lightly stepped, and his figure instantly leaped forward. Only a 10-meter-tall giant dragon's shadow was left behind. At the same time, after Mo sure left. In the figurine pit, tentacles as thick as fingers drilled out. If one looked carefully, one could see that each tentacle was made up of hundreds and thousands of extremely small arms. After these tentacles drilled out of the ground, they were like small snakes, crawling in all directions. Soon, the entire figurine pit was covered with blood-red tentacles. Moreover, they climbed along the legs of the terracotta soldiers and climbed up their bodies. The terracotta soldiers suddenly seemed to be formed by blood-red tentacles. All of the tentacles were greedily absorbing the blood and flesh of the bats on the ground. In a short 5 minutes, the blood and flesh of the 300 bats were completely absorbed. Then, in the figurine pit, blood began to seep out from the tentacles. Soon, the blood in the figurine pit was enough to cover the ground. A thick smell of blood immediately spread out. The tentacles were still quickly seeping out blood. Half an hour later, the 3 huge figurine pits had turned into 3 huge blood pools that were about 1.5 meters deep. These 3 blood pools, the largest one was the size of 30 basketball courts. The smallest one was the size of 5 football courts. At this time, the blood had just reached the neck of the terracotta soldiers. Looking from above, it looked like thousands of human heads were floating on the water. Extremely strange. Chapter 98. Mosher took another 4.5 steps and returned to the grove. When he left, he used his telekinesis to create a telekinesis illusion to replace himself. After reaching level 10 telekinesis, he could use his telekinesis to create a temporary telekinesis illusion to replace himself. Psychokinesis could be used to confuse the enemy. Ordinary people couldn't see telekinesis illusions, but psychokinesis could. It could be said that telekinesis illusions were a godly skill used to deceive psychokinesis. Naturally, he did this to prevent Zhenshishir from detecting any abnormalities. When he returned to the helicopter, it had been repaired and was waiting for him. Haoren saw Mosher and laughed. You changed your clothes just to relieve yourself. Did you pee on your clothes? Mosher smiled bitterly and said, that shirt was very old. It was scraped by the thorns on the tree just now and turned into strips of cloth. The researcher knew that Mosher was a mysterious strong man. He wondered if he had gone to kill zombies and mutant beasts just now. Haoren and Zhenshishir were puzzled, but they didn't suspect much. After all, in their eyes, this corpse keeper was just an ordinary person. Then, the helicopters slowly rose and flew toward the northeast. However, when Mosher looked down with the blood demon's eye, he frowned slightly. He saw that there was only a wisp of corpse aura above the museum just now, but now it was full of corpse aura. It covered a 5-kilometer radius around the museum. It was the first time Mosher had seen such a strong corpse aura. The corpse aura of the dam in the C9 base was not even worth mentioning compared to this. However, the corpse aura here was not the strongest. About 1,500 meters to the west of the museum, there was a small mountain there, which was the mausoleum of Emperor Qin. The corpse aura above the mausoleum was even more terrifying. It directly covered half the sky. It was like a blood-red sandstorm that covered the sky and the earth. There was even a large amount of corpse aura in the center that seemed to be solidified. Even when millions of zombies had besieged the city, there hadn't been such a strong zombie aura. Even Mosher couldn't help but feel a chill when he saw the almost solidified corpse chi. Moreover, the corpse chi gave him a very oppressive feeling. He had never felt this way when he saw corpse chi before. Obviously, the zombie that could produce this kind of corpse energy must be a terrifyingly strong zombie. And according to his previous experience, that guy's strength is likely to have surpassed level 10 mutant zombies. Mosher thought to himself, the wilderness is really dangerous. It seemed like he had better stay in the base and improve his strength if he had nothing to do. Although Zhenshishir couldn't see the corpse energy, as a psychokinesis, her senses were far stronger than the average person's. She frowned and looked in the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. I keep feeling that there's something wrong with that mountain. Let's leave quickly. Haoren didn't say anything this time. He piloted the helicopter and quickly left the mausoleum. When Emperor Qin's mausoleum was about to disappear from their sight, Mosher looked back again and glanced at it with the blood demon's eyes. He saw that the corpse energy still covered half of the sky there. The rest of the journey was very smooth. With the previous lesson, Mosher didn't think about anything else. He used his telekinesis to explore the surroundings along the way. Once there were zombies and mutant beasts that were a threat to them, they would be killed immediately. Zhenshishir would sometimes detect the zombies and mutant beasts that Mosher killed. This made her feel a little scared. She felt that there seemed to be a strong person in front of them. Otherwise, how could she explain the mutant beasts and zombies that were killed along the way? But no matter how she probed with her telekinesis, she couldn't find any clues about the strong person. Finally, 2 hours later, they arrived at the sky above base C2. Base C2 was half the size of Base C1. There were no walls, but there were 3 10-meter-high walls from the inside to the outside, which surrounded the base. Before the helicopter landed, Mo Sure used his telekinesis. It went directly into the researcher's mind. The researcher's name was Xiao Di. After Mo Sure's telekinesis went into his mind, he began to stimulate his brain cells. His brain cells quickly became active. His brain waves also became stronger. Soon, the activity of his brain cells far exceeded that of an ordinary person. The strength of his brain waves also far exceeded that of an ordinary person. He had reached the strength of level 1 psychokinesis. However, this was not the end. Mo Sure continued to stimulate his brain cells. His telekinesis continued to increase. Level 2. Level 3. Level 4, finally, his telekinesis stopped at level 5. From an ordinary person to a level 5 psychokinesis. It only took more than a minute. This was the power of the telekinesis blessing. When Sister Ponytail raised the ordinary people in the base to psychokinesis, most of them were level 1. Only one was level 2. This was because she was only a level 5 psychokinesis. Limited by her telekinesis, she could only raise it to this level. And Mo Sure's telekinesis far exceeded her. Therefore, he could easily raise others' telekinesis to level 5. Of course, if he wanted to forcefully raise it to level 6, he could do it. However, that would consume too much of his telekinesis. There was no need. Naturally, Xiao Di also felt his own abnormality. His brain kept heating up. At the same time, he felt his mind clear and his eyes clear. The feeling that came from his head made him want to moan in pleasure. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Stay calm, as if nothing happened. That voice was like a great bell in his mind. It was deafening and intimidating. He could not help but obey the voice's orders. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and pretended as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, Mo Sure nodded in his heart. The leader's will was indeed powerful. The reason why Mo Sure wanted to raise Xiao Di to psychokinesis and use the leader's will on him. Naturally, he wanted him to be his informant. After what happened before, Mo Sure knew deeply that in this apocalypse, zombies and mutated beasts were not scary. What was scarier than zombies and mutated beasts was the human heart. Therefore, it was necessary to set up an informant in advance. Hao Ren and Jin Shishir, who were next to them, could not imagine that the two people next to them were not ordinary people at all. They were psychokinesis, which was far more powerful than them. One was level 5 psychokinesis. The other was level 10 psychokinesis, which they could not imagine at all. Soon, the helicopter landed. Hao Ren called people over and arranged accommodation for Mo Sure and Xiao Di. He said, don't neglect them. They are technical talents. Mo Sure and Xiao Di were temporarily arranged in an apartment next to the hunting group. After entering the room, Mo Sure probed with his telekinesis again. He entered Xiao Di's brain. He ordered Xiao Di, don't expose your strength. If there is any important news in the future, report to me. Xiao Di's response came quickly, yes. At the same time, Mo Sure had spread out his telekinesis to explore a radius of 1 kilometer. It was his first time here, so he had to be careful. At the same time, Hao Ren and Jin Shishir had already gone to the base chief's office to report. Chapter 99. After Mo Sure and Xiao Di settled down, Hao Ren and Jin Shishir went to report to the chief of the base. The chief's office was in the hunter group's headquarters. Mo Sure's mind power probed out, and he could easily detect their every move. The chief was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was also a hunter. Seeing the two of them enter, he put down the documents in his hand and said, this time, we sent 9 helicopters to the other 9 bases to exchange information. You two came back the latest. Hao Ren lowered his head and said, I'm sorry, Chief. We ran into some trouble. Then, he told him how the people of Base C1 were hostile to them, how strange things happened, how they were locked up in the detention room, and so on. As for how they were suddenly cleared of their wrongdoings and who did those things, the people of Base C1 didn't tell them at all. Naturally, they didn't know. Then, they told the chief about the construction of the laboratory and the zombie farm. The bureau chief agreed with this. The helicopters that came back earlier had brought back all kinds of news from the other bases. They said that a few bases had built laboratories to study viruses, hunters, and psychokinesis. Their base C2 hadn't built a laboratory yet. He was planning to build a laboratory. In the end, Zhen Shishir said, "Chief, on our way back, it seems that there was a strong person in front of us." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly. Zhen Shishir continued, "On the way back, my psychic power could often detect the corpses of some mutated beasts and zombies on the ground. It seems that these mutated beasts and zombies were all killed in one move and torn in half. And even some level 5 mutated beasts and zombies were killed in one move." Hao Ren's expression changed slightly. "There's such a strong person." The chief thought of another point. "You mean he was in front of you all the way?" Zhen Shishir nodded. "It seems so." The chief frowned slightly. "In other words, he's probably in our base now?" Zhen Shishir nodded. The bureau chief pondered for a moment and asked, "Could it be the two people you brought back?" Zhen Shishir shook her head slightly. "The two of them are just ordinary people. They've been with us all this time, so it can't be them." When the bureau chief heard this, his expression became even more serious. "The strongest hunter in our base is only level 5. The strongest psychokinesis was only at level 5. If it's really as you said, then the strength of that powerhouse is obviously far beyond level 5. He sneaked into our base without anyone noticing. He must be up to something. Hao Ren, tell the hunter group to be on high alert. Zhen Shishir, remind all the psychokinesis members to secretly investigate the base. Let's see if we can find anything." The two men looked at each other and said, "Yes, Chief." In the end, the bureau chief said, "The 9 helicopters we sent this time brought back a lot of useful information. I'll get someone to explain it to you in detail later, so you can understand the current situation." When Mo heard this, his heart skipped a beat. The world situation was important information. Soon, someone came over to explain the world situation to Zhen Shishir and Hao Ren. From this, it could be seen that the chief thought highly of these two people. From this person, Mo understood a lot of things that he didn't know before. And what surprised Mo the most was that people in other bases had seen a zombie from afar. That was a much stronger and more terrifying existence than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. With a roar, more than 30 level 10 strong mutated beasts' heads exploded. All the other zombies, even level 10 strong mutated zombies, were obedient in front of that zombie. Because that zombie was much stronger than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. So they called it a super mutated zombie. When Mo heard this, his heart trembled. There was a super mutated zombie. At the same time, he remembered the king that the two zombies mentioned when he killed them in the blood pool. It was very likely that the king was a super mutated zombie. With his current strength of level 10 psychokinesis, he could easily kill a level 10 strong mutated zombie. Then what about a super mutated zombie? Mo felt that his telekinesis might have a little advantage. But the other party's roar could explode the head of a level 10 strong mutated beast. In other words, the other party could use sound waves to attack. That's hard to say. It seemed that in the next period of time, he had to sign in well and improve his strength. That night, Mo signed in and injected 10 enhancers. After these 10 enhancers were injected, his body's strength finally improved again. He reached level 10 hunter. In the next half a month, he continued to sign in and give out enhancers, increasing his body's strength to the limit. At this point, whether it was his telekinesis or his body's strength, he had reached the limit. If he wanted to break through again, he really needed a certain opportunity. Perhaps, the dragon ruins would be his opportunity. However, in the past few days, he hadn't gone to the dragon ruins. After all, he didn't know much about the wilderness around base C2. It wouldn't be too late to go to the dragon ruins after he understood the surrounding situation. At the same time, in the past few days, the base had already begun to plan to build a laboratory and a corpse farm. Of course, the preparations would take a long time. Therefore, Mo Sure was very idle these days. He wandered around base C2 every day. In the eyes of others, he was taking a stroll and wandering. But when Mo Sure was wandering, he had been using his telekinesis to investigate everything in base C2. As long as anyone talked about base C2 and the situation around the base, they couldn't escape his detection. Finally, after a month, he had almost figured out the situation around base C2 and the surrounding area. The strength of the strong mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies around base C2 was much stronger than those around base C1. But they were all below level 10. Mo Sure could easily deal with them. At the same time, he also heard a strange thing. 100 kilometers to the east, the plants there were blood red. Mo Sure took out the map and looked at it. 100 kilometers to the east was the location of the dragon ruins. This made him frown tightly. He thought that as long as he found the right opportunity here, he could easily go to the dragon ruins to sign in. He didn't expect that there would be something strange about the dragon ruins. Why was it so difficult to level up? If his thoughts were known by other hunters and psychokinesis, they would probably want to kick him to death. We only level up once every 4 to 5 years, or even 7 to 8 years. You level up several times a year. You think it's difficult? Difficult my ass. That night, it was drizzling. Mo Sure lay on the bed, eating the roasted chicken that he had signed in from the cafeteria while drinking beer. He waited for the arrival of 12 o'clock. However, at around 11:30, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. D. Chapter 100. At night, Mo Sure took out the virtual sentry tower and set it up on the roof of his apartment building. It was better to be careful as he was new here. 11:30 p.m. Mo Sure felt a little hungry. He immediately took out the roast chicken and beer and ate happily. In the past year, in order to make his mental power and physical strength reach the limit, he almost never went to the cafeteria to sign in. Now that both of them had reached the limit, he could finally satisfy his hunger. Just as he was happily eating the roast chicken and drinking beer. Suddenly, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Beep, 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 then, urgent shouts could be heard from the loudspeaker. Zombies are attacking the city. All hunters and psychokinesis, immediately go to the northeast of the first line of defense. Mo Sure sighed. He couldn't even eat supper in peace. Then, he shook his head and ignored it. According to his understanding in the past few days, there were many mutant beasts and zombies in the wilderness around base C1. But at most, they were strong mutant zombies below level 3. And base C2 had level 5 hunters and level 5 psychokinesis. There was no need for him to do anything. Thinking of this, he continued to eat and drink happily. At this time, in the northeast of base C2. Outside the first wall. There was already a large black mass of zombies gathered. Preliminary estimates showed that there were tens of thousands of zombies. Inside the wall, the hunter group had already gathered. They all had solemn expressions. Under the illumination of the searchlight on the sentry tower, they saw the zombies gathered on the opposite side. The total number was estimated to be 10,000. Among them, those standing in the back row had expressions that were obviously different from ordinary zombies. They were all strong mutant zombies. And the number of strong mutant zombies had reached a terrifying number of more than 1,000. This was equivalent to more than 1,000 hunters. Which base could have more than 1,000 hunters? It was already a lot to have 60 or 70 hunters. And in base C2, there were only 63 hunters. Fortunately, there were more than 30 psychokinesis in base C2. And there were more than 5,000 hunters. Clearly, this was going to be an extremely tragic battle. If they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If they lost, there wouldn't be many zombies left. As a hunter, the chief of the base personally came to the front line to command. His face was as still as water. Although they were facing an army, they did not panic at all. He commanded the hunting group in an orderly manner. But no one knew how heavy his heart was at this moment. In the past, when the zombies gathered to attack the city on a large scale, their scouts in the wild could detect some movements in advance. However, today, none of their scouts had returned with any news. This was enough to show that tonight's zombies were far stronger than before. They were so powerful that even the scouts couldn't send back any information. And because the scouts did not send back any information, their preparations were somewhat inadequate. So much so that they did not move the people to the underground shelters in advance. It was close to midnight. The light rain gradually turned into heavy rain. The rain poured down in torrents. From time to time, a bolt of lightning would appear in the sky, winding like a dragon. At a certain moment, a thick bolt of lightning tore through the night sky. Among the zombies, an 8-year-old lowly zombie girl slowly stood out. She was wearing a sky-blue princess dress and had a double ponytail. If one looked at her from behind, she was definitely a cute little lowly. But if one looked at her from the front, the left side of her face had been torn open and had been drooping. When she walked, the left side of her face was like a pig's ear, flapping up and down. Her grayish-white eyes stared at the wall in the distance under the lightning. She paused for a few seconds. Suddenly, she raised her right claw and opened her torn mouth. From her throat, she let out a shocking roar. Roar, roar, in the next moment, these tens of thousands of zombies all roared. Accompanied by this deafening roar, all the zombies surged toward the high wall together. On the sentry tower, the base chief saw this and held the giant sword in his hand tightly. He shouted, "Fire, da-da-da, whoosh, boom." Tongues of fire were constantly spurting out from the shooting holes on the high wall. Those ordinary zombies were suddenly swept to the ground one after another. Their flesh and blood were blown away by the rockets. However, the number of ordinary zombies was close to 10,000. They could not eliminate nearly 10,000 zombies in a short period of time. What's more, there were more than 1,000 strong mutated zombies. Artillery fire could not do anything to them. The distance between the strong mutated zombies and the high wall was quickly closing. On the sentry tower, the base chief ordered loudly, "Psychokinesis, prepare to attack with flying knives. Every psychokinesis, leave a hunter beside them to protect them. The rest of the hunters, go outside the wall and stop the zombies from attacking the wall. Be careful not to leave the range of your telekinesis." Soon, more than 30 hunters jumped down from the wall and lined up outside the wall. After a while, the flood of zombies collided with these 30 hunters. On the wall, nearly 400 flying knives were like 400 scythes of the Grim Reaper, harvesting these zombies. Even if it was a strong mutated zombie, if it was accidentally hit in the head by these flying knives, it would be killed in one blow. And the lowly female zombie stared at the base chief on the sentry tower. In her grayish-white eyes, there was a fierce light. Like a beast that chose people to devour. At the same time, in the base, urgent words were constantly coming out from the loudspeaker: "Emergency in the northeast, all positions, please send soldiers to support as soon as possible. I repeat, support as soon as possible." Mo Sure used his telekinesis to explore. In the heavy rain, he saw that the surrounding patrols had already headed to the northeast. At the same time, the zombie hunters, patrols, and soldiers in other positions also rushed to the northeast. Mo Sure still did not move. All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible. All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible. Mo Sure could detect that in the apartment building, almost everyone had already rushed to the nearest underground shelter. He still did not move and continued to eat his roasted chicken. At the same time, at the entrance of the underground shelter more than 700 meters away from the apartment building. People fled to the underground shelter as if they were crazy. Among the crowd, there were cries of children and women from time to time. Although everyone knew that the zombies were getting stronger and stronger. Human hunters and psychokinesis were not getting stronger as fast as the zombies. Humans seemed to be heading towards extinction. However, when this day really came, they still could not believe it. Crack, in the sky, a bolt of lightning zigzagged across. Under this bolt of lightning, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the shelter without warning. The soldier in charge of commanding at the entrance was shocked when he saw this figure. He quickly shone a flashlight over. In the heavy rain, the left side of the figure's face was badly mutilated. On the right side of his face, there wasn't even any flesh and blood, only white bones remained. The strangest thing was that this guy was actually grinning. As if he was laughing. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.